This man saw a report about the zombie crisis on television. He decided to take his daughter outside to survive, but the moment they stepped out, his daughter lost her life. Holding his daughter's corpse in his arms, the man sank into endless self-blame, utterly despairing. And so, he decided to end his own life. Just then, a goddess with golden wings that blotted out the sky suddenly descended. She granted him 99 chances to protect his daughter. Whenever, because of his own mistake, he failed to protect his daughter, he would, without hesitation, put a bullet into himself and start over. But every time he gave it his all, he was always one step short. As the number above his head decreased little by little, his strength also gradually grew through each death, until only one final chance remained. He discovered a base guarded by soldiers. There was also a medical team from a university hospital there, caring for the survivors. He had spent the latter half of his life there before. This time, he decided to take his daughter to that safe haven. He finally stood before his daughter's grave and used his last chance. After reviewing all 99 attempts, he had already made every possible preparation. But in this rebirth, an unexpected variable suddenly appeared. It was the horde of zombies blocking the front of his home. In the previous 99 cycles, there had never been any situation different from the past. So he naturally assumed that this time would be the same as well. But he never expected that the moment he stepped outside this time, zombies would surge in like a swarm of locusts. His daughter's voice snapped him out of his frozen thoughts. In an instant, he suddenly shoved his daughter back into the house and slammed the door shut behind him. No matter how his daughter twisted the doorknob, pushed the door, and cried out from inside, he only used his body to block the door, pressing against it with all his strength. The zombies frantically tore and bit at him, but after experiencing 99 deaths, he had long since grown accustomed to pain that felt as if it were tearing his soul apart. The moment he thought of his daughter falling into danger again without him, he could not accept it. He erupted with astonishing willpower and stood up once more. Even if it took 100 times, even if it took 1,000 times, as long as his daughter was still alive, even if he died, he absolutely could not fall. At that moment, he spread his arms and blasted the zombies off his body. More zombies lunged at him. He reached out and grabbed one, directly tearing off the zombie's head. In an instant, he flashed forward and threw a punch, blasting several more zombies away. Facing the zombies' lunging bites, the man retaliated with even more ferocious bites, then finally tore the zombie's head off by force. Immediately after, he punched straight through another zombie's body. He leapt into the air, swinging his fist as he descended from above, smashing viciously into another zombie on the ground. The horde behind him stopped. With his back to them, the man radiated an icy pressure that made them afraid to act rashly. With just one glance back, he intimidated all the zombies. Clearly, this group of zombies could no longer escape complete annihilation. Meanwhile, his daughter, who had been locked inside the house the entire time, collapsed onto the floor. When the man opened the door and saw his daughter's face once more, he knew that the descending god had given him another chance. This time, even if he was no longer human, he would protect his daughter until the very last moment. 7 days later, they arrived at Supermarket A in District M of S City. They found the soldiers standing guard here. When the soldiers saw a suspicious person, they immediately shouted, "With so many zombies around here, how did you make it here alive? Answer me right now before I blow your head off." The soldier saw the man's face and vaguely felt that something was off. Seeing that the man was wearing sunglasses, the soldier even thought he might be some kind of celebrity. At this moment, a woman with black hair tied in a high ponytail, cold eyes, and a combat uniform directly told the father and daughter to leave. She casually said that there was no room left here and told them to go somewhere else. Their eyes met, and she once again coldly ordered the man to leave. Unexpectedly, the man calmly turned around and began playing the sympathy card. "My daughter and I have been wandering outside all this time, and her asthma has flared up again. If there's really no other way, you can just take in my daughter. Please, I'm begging you, save her." The female soldier's name was Cha Hyri. After hearing the man's words, she was stunned at first. Then her expression gradually became fierce. Seeing this, the soldier beside her thought the father and daughter were already doomed, so he jeered from the side. "Do you think a pity act will work on our captain?" However, Cha Hyri was already in tears, and then agreed to let them in. She told her comrades not to misunderstand. She was not being soft-hearted. It was just that they happened to be short on manpower to guard the supermarket. "Captain, you should wipe your nose first." The soldier knew that once Ja Hyri made a decision, she would not change it. Ryu Minsik had experienced 99 rebirths, so he had already figured out Cha Hyri's personality completely. Although she was as calm as a snake, for some unknown reason, she was always easily moved by parental sacrifice. His daughter, Ryu Dami, was still sulking because of her father's impromptu performance just now. The soldier told them to follow him. Ryu Dami's head suddenly throbbed with swelling pain. Ryu Minsik told his daughter to lean on his shoulder. He knew that if Ryu Dami did not rest soon, she would be in danger. They walked inside, and Ryu Minsik saw yet another new variable. This building had never collapsed in any of the previous rebirths. The soldier told them that 3 days ago, zombies had besieged this place. They and Cha Hyori had lured the zombies into the neighboring building. Then they detonated the explosives that had been set up in advance. They blew all the zombies to pieces. The soldier believed that even if the zombies were not dead, they had already been completely buried. But Ryu Minsik's heart sank, and a strong ominous premonition surged within him. The soldier, however, did not take it seriously at all. But in the next second, a giant zombie stood up behind him. Sensing movement, he suddenly turned his head to look. It was a giant zombie, rotten and hideous, with blood-red eyes bulging wide open. The soldier had no time to react. The zombie had already raised its fist high, suddenly exerting its strength, and smashed it down viciously. Cha Hyori prepared to look for a chance to get closer, but the zombie's fist had already locked onto her. Fortunately, she was agile enough to dodge that terrifying blow. Only then did the soldiers around them finally react. Cha Hyori stood in front of the two of them and ordered all the soldiers to open fire. Everyone pulled their rifle triggers at the same time, and dense firepower swept wildly toward the giant zombie. However, the hail of bullets had no effect on the giant zombie before them, and instead completely enraged it. The giant zombie roared and charged at the soldiers, raising its hand into an uppercut. Most of them were sent flying directly, leaving only one soldier trembling on the ground. Immediately after, it clasped its fists together and raised them behind its head to gather strength. Just as its fists were about to fall, a backpack smashed into it, instantly diverting its attention. Cha Hyori took the opportunity to save the soldier, sternly scolding him that he had to pull himself together. Only then did Cha Hyori realize that this zombie was completely different from the ordinary zombies from 3 days ago. She suddenly whipped her head around, and ordered everyone to immediately run back to the supermarket. Ryu Minsik wanted to speak up and warn her, but Cha Hyori no longer had time to care and only told him to run quickly. Ryu Minsik understood in his heart that continuing to flee was no solution at all. He had to do something. So he changed direction and charged straight toward the zombie from the front. Ryu Minsik clenched his fist, the veins on his arm bulging. Cha Hyori had originally planned to lure the giant zombie to the isolation barricaded outside the supermarket. She wanted to delay it as much as possible, then search for its weakness. But she never expected that there were still survivors on the first floor who had not been evacuated. She had thought this place had been cleared long ago. Now she had to think of another way. Cha Hyori ordered 3 soldiers to enter the supermarket, while she alone drew the zombie's attention. Cha Hyori turned back and saw Ryu Dami, only then realizing that her father was gone. She thought Ryu Minsik had abandoned his daughter and fled alone. But Ryu Dami pointed toward the zombie. Cha Hyori looked in the direction she was pointing. Ryu Minsik had his 10 fingers tightly interlocked, and was smashing them madly down onto the zombie lying on the ground. Immediately after, he once again raised his interlocked hands high and delivered the final blow. Everyone stared in stunned silence. A father in the crowd even instinctively covered his child's eyes. Not long after, the zombie stopped moving completely. Only then did Ryu Minsik slowly stand up, and casually pat down his clothes. Then he apologized to Ryu Dami in the crowd. He had failed to keep the promise between him and Ryu Dami, because he was afraid that Ryu Dami would get hurt. As soon as his words fell, the scene instantly sank into dead silence. Cha Hyori was filled with wariness toward Ryu Minsik before her. His performance just now had clearly exceeded the limits of humanity, and Cha Hyori could not help beginning to suspect his true identity. Ryu Minsik adjusted his sunglasses and began formally introducing himself. "My name is Ryu Minsik, and I am Ryu Dami's father." Ryu Dami was still worried that her father would expose his identity as a zombie, but in the next second, he casually made up the identity of a zombie expert. Cha Hyori still looked full of doubt. "After the zombies appeared, I thoroughly analyzed their traits and weaknesses. I'm glad I could be of help to you. I hope we'll get along well from now on." "I see. Do you think I would believe you that easily?" Of course Cha Hyori could not possibly believe him, and she directly placed her knife against Ryu Minsik's neck. The atmosphere instantly grew tense to the extreme. This zombie could not even be killed by bullets, yet Ryu Minsik could knock it down with his bare hands. Moreover, his eyes were still crimson red. All sorts of signs indicated that Ryu Minsik was not human. Ryu Minsik, however, calmly explained, "Of course guns can kill it. It had already been severely wounded by bullets and was in a weakened state. As for me, I merely delivered the final blow. It is a mutant formed by the fusion of 2 zombies. Its destructive power is extremely strong, and its defensive ability is also one of its traits. Its weakness is precisely the starting point of the fusion, the chin, but it requires force on the level of a hammer strike to be enough to kill it. As for his own eyes, it was because of congenital melanin deficiency. The reason Ryu Minsik wore sunglasses was because a gaze like Cha Hyori's made him very uncomfortable. Now, do you still think I'm a zombie? These explanations were still not enough to completely dispel Cha Hyori's suspicions. But Cha Hyori thought about it from another angle. How could there possibly be a zombie who risked his life to protect his own daughter? In the end, she still agreed to let Ryu Minseek continue following her. However, she would still keep a close watch on Ryu Minseek. Two soldiers hurried over to check the situation, but Cha Hyori kicked them without hesitation. Because she had said before that once a situation occurred, they were to quickly evacuate everyone to the underground parking lot. But the soldiers had failed to do so. We panicked too much. If the zombie hadn't died, everyone in the supermarket would have lost their lives. If there was a next time, Cha Hyori would personally kill them before the zombies even had to act. The soldiers immediately gave Cha Hyori a serious salute. In the plaza inside the supermarket, Ryu Dami was worried that her father's identity would be exposed. At the same time, she also felt that Ryu Minseek seemed to know Cha Hyori. Ryu Minseek denied his daughter's guess and only said that he judged from Cha Hyori's facial features that she did not seem like a heartless person. In fact, in his previous rebirths, he and Cha Hyori had once been comrades fighting side by side. Ryu Minseek now had to leave for a moment to get some food. He told Ryu Dami to obediently wait for him to return. Ryu Dami made Ryu Minseek promise that he absolutely could not tell anyone about the fact that he had become a zombie. Ryu Dami was worried that once other people found out, they would hurt Ryu Minseek. This was a promise that belonged only to the two of them. If Ryu Minseek's condition was exposed here, people would definitely fall into madness in an instant. After a while, Ryu Minseek came back holding a box of food, and saw that his daughter had already fallen asleep. He did not wake his daughter, only gently pulling the blanket up over her. A week ago, that strange power entered Ryu Minseek's body. It felt so familiar that it made him uncomfortable, as if it had been residing inside him from the very beginning. There was also another unsettling question. The staged evolution of the zombies was happening far too quickly. Among the 100 zombies gathered in front of his door, a mutant had appeared in just 1 week. Across Ryu Minseek's 99 rebirths, the zombies had never evolved at such an exaggerated speed. This time was clearly full of variables. What he truly could not understand was why the zombies had changed. Ryu Minseek vaguely felt that the reason might lie with himself. Ryu Minseek could sense that the zombies were searching for him, and they were trying to eliminate Ryu Minseek and Ryu Dami. Ryu Minseek did not know whether they hated him or feared him. But one thing was certain, to them, Ryu Minseek was also a variable. Ryu Minseek secretly left the supermarket and came alone to an open area, drawing the entire zombie horde over. That way, Ryu Minseek would not have to look for them one by one. The current Ryu Minseek could no longer wait to begin fighting. He directly snapped the A-frame ladder in half. Ryu Minseek had to deal with them all before his daughter woke up. The zombie horde charged madly toward Ryu Minseek at the center. Ryu Minseek swung the ladder first, smashing it hard into a zombie's neck, directly separating its head from its body. He instantly charged forward head-on, and the giant zombie's body suddenly lost its balance. Just then, a zombie bit into his arm, and actually tore his arm off alive. Ryu Minseek directly stepped on another zombie to gain leverage, then struck with a flying knee, knocking the zombie that had bitten off his arm to the ground. Immediately after, his lost arm grew back at extreme speed, instantly returning to normal. Ryu Minseek's expression was cold and stern, his gaze icy, the veins on his arm bulging. He smashed a punch into the zombie's head, and even the ground cracked apart with it. Suddenly, a zombie shaped like a centipede reared up high. It sprayed blue-purple corrosive poison gas downward, instantly engulfing the ground. Ryu Minseek leapt into the air, and pierced straight through the centipede zombie's skull with a single strike. Then, he took out 2 axes. He slaughtered all the surrounding zombies, blood bursting through the air as chunks of corpses flew in every direction. Ryu Minseek's eyes remained icy as he once again chased after the zombie at the very back. The other party stretched out several arms to attack, but was stomped to the ground by Ryu Minseek. It struggled wildly, letting out an angry roar. Ryu Minseek brought an axe down, directly sending the zombie's head flying. In the end, all the zombies were cleaned up by Ryu Minseek. The next morning, Ryu Dami, who had been sleeping soundly, slowly opened her eyes, then sat up and stretched. Ryu Dami saw the breakfast her father handed over. It was plated as delicately as a bento creation, with even a heart decorating the rice. Ryu Minseek reached out to signal his daughter to hurry and eat. She smiled and nodded, softly saying, "All right." On Cha Hyori's side, she received a report from a soldier that there had been movement between 1 and 5 in the morning. Moreover, the zombies in that area had all died. Cha Hyori could hardly believe it. Could they actually kill each other? The soldier could not believe it either, but he had indeed seen it with his own eyes. Cha Hyori could not figure it out. So many zombies had actually been wiped out within 4 hours. She looked toward the communication equipment, and suddenly came up with a new plan. She ordered the soldier to gather everyone. From now on, Supermarket A would officially implement an escape plan. The news that the surrounding zombies had disappeared completely soon spread through the crowd. Everyone cheered excitedly. "We're safe." Ryu Dami also heard about this. Ryu Minsik put a safety helmet on his daughter's head. "Dami, listen carefully. No matter what happens later, you absolutely must not take off this helmet, understand?" Ryu Dami asked in confusion. Later, Cha Hyori walked over holding a megaphone. She officially informed everyone that the zombies in this area had all been eliminated. After receiving confirmed news, the people became even more excited. In the next second, however, Cha Hyori changed the subject, saying that she would lead everyone away from here. The crowd could not understand. Since all the zombies had already been eliminated, why did they still have to escape? 3 days ago, Cha Hyori had maintained close contact with a certain unit. The 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade was the only surviving brigade-level unit in Region G. Not only did it possess large-scale armored weapons and brigade-level forces, it also allowed ordinary civilians to join. The people still did not quite believe this was true. Cha Hyori reassured everyone by saying, "Everyone, there is no need to worry. I know the person on the other end of the communication better than anyone. We can completely trust him." Clearly, the people were not buying it. "Trust, my ass. Just because of a few communications, you want us to go throw our lives away?" Cha Hyori wanted to lead the people away, but they insisted on staying here. Someone in the crowd suddenly spoke up and began targeting Cha Hyori. "I knew this day would come. If it were a male leader instead, would he make such an impulsive and risky decision?" For a moment, Cha Hyori felt powerless despite wanting to act. But suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd. "The zombies will come again. Who do you think you are? Pretending to be some prophet." The person speaking was Ryu Minsik. At this moment, he was already standing in front of the man, speaking calmly. "If you stay here, you will only become fish on the chopping block. Can that even be considered living? You're merely waiting obediently for death." The instant their eyes met, the man was so frightened by Ryu Minsik that he could barely breathe. Ryu Minsik continued, "No one can guarantee that following them will definitely let you survive. But if you don't go with the soldiers, if you don't rely on the soldiers' protection, is there really any chance you can survive?" The opposing voices in the crowd began to gradually quiet down. Little by little, people began to agree with Cha Hyori's plan. Only by following the soldiers will we have a chance to be protected and survive. In the end, the people agreed to follow Cha Hyori and escape. Even Cha Hyori herself could not figure out how exactly Ryu Minsik had changed people's minds in an instant. Who exactly was he? Ryu Minsik said that Cha Hyori did not need to thank him. Takno Jutsu was his specialty, honed through countless rebirths. "I'm doing this for myself and my daughter as well." Ryu Minsik held out his hand, indicating that he was willing to believe Cha Hyori would definitely be able to do it. Cha Hyori's confidence surged, and she shouted loudly into the megaphone, "I will make sure everyone survives." Now, they officially set out on their escape journey. 2 buses were protected in the middle by military vehicles, one in front and one behind. Cha Hyori sat at the front, vigilantly observing the surrounding situation. The driver said it had been a long time since he had crossed the Han River, so it felt somewhat unfamiliar. Cha Hyori did not let down her guard in the slightest and said coldly, "Focus. This has only just begun." At this moment, the person in the passenger seat reminded them that zombies had appeared ahead. The zombies slowly emerging from all around grew more and more numerous. Cha Hyori immediately spoke into the walkie-talkie. "Zombie spotted. Open fire immediately. Team C, take everyone right. We'll turn left. Move now." Cha Hyori made use of the fact that zombies' hearing was sharper than their vision. She threw a can from the vehicle, using the sound to attract the zombies. Cha Hyori's plan worked, successfully holding the zombies back. Cha Hyori told the driver to maintain this distance and keep moving forward. They absolutely could not be caught. But the number of zombies kept increasing, and they were about to catch up soon. Cha Hyori ordered the driver to head for Songsam Bridge. "Now, turn around directly." The truck drifted and came to a steady stop. At this moment, an extremely fast zombie directly sent the zombies blocking the front flying. Quite a few zombies fell from the bridge just like that. At this moment, Ryu Minsik arrived in a road roller to provide support. The road roller possessed dozens of tons of pressure, a piece of heavy equipment powerful enough to crush everything. The zombies ahead were just like that, crushed by Ryu Minsik all the way through. Even the medium-sized zombies were directly knocked off the bridge. Cha Hyori and the others were all stunned. On the bus on the other side, there was one thing that had been weighing on Ryu Dami's mind the entire time. Before getting on the bus, Ryu Minsik had insisted on going to help them. Ryu Dami was worried that Ryu Minsik's secret would be discovered by the soldiers. Ryu Minsik told his daughter not to worry. He was only going to support them. He absolutely would not reveal any flaw. "Captain Cha's squad is back." These words interrupted Ryu Dami's thoughts. Then, she saw Ryu Minsik driving the road roller, bringing the squad back. Cha Hyori ordered the convoy to follow behind the road roller. Any zombies that appeared ahead could be directly crushed. Just like that, they arrived at the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. There was an impressive figure here, someone who had once led the troops to survive for a very long time in the previous rebirths. This place was also one of the core strongholds they had to pass through on the way to D-City. Reaching this place in only 8 days was a speed never achieved before. But Ryu Minsik still could not let down his guard. If he acted rashly, Ryu Dami might fall into danger, and he would not deviate from the route verified in his previous life. The soldiers cheered for Ryu Minsuk, not expecting that Ryu Minsuk could even drive a road roller. I only learned a little. After all, the more you know, the better it is for survival. Cha Hairi rarely opened her mouth to thank him. Ryu Minsik did not hear clearly and wanted her to say it again. Cha Hairi immediately became a little irritated and quickly changed her words. You're so noisy. The soldier standing guard here had been waiting for Cha Hairi the entire time. The soldier said he had received notice from the colonel that, with Cha Hairi's ability, she would be able to arrive here today. She was not actually very familiar with the colonel. The colonel said that a stubborn and extremely noisy female soldier would arrive here. Cha Hairi's face darkened after hearing this, and she was about to go find the colonel on the spot. The guard soldier's expression immediately returned to seriousness. The colonel is at the rear gate. Zombies appeared over there. Cha Hairi was startled. The colonel personally led troops to handle the zombies? That's not it. The soldier was silent for a moment. The colonel went alone. On the watchtower at the rear gate of the unit, a soldier glanced at his watch. Colonel, 27 seconds. You broke the record. The colonel sighed that he truly was worthy of being the battle axe of the infantry brigade. That swing of the axe was simply far too satisfying. The soldier on the watchtower suggested using guns to deal with the zombies. What if he got bitten? But Cha Pungo did not take it seriously at all. How could I possibly get bitten? At my level, I only need one glance to judge their combat power. Besides, with your pathetic level of combat power, what help could you possibly be to me? You'd make people laugh their teeth off. The two of them were left speechless. Cha Pungo stretched his body while muttering to himself. Other than these useless fools, can't the heavens drop down one capable talent? Just then, a medium-sized zombie actually climbed back up again. Cha Pungo frowned slightly, feeling somewhat puzzled. The zombie suddenly charged fiercely toward Cha Pungo, but it was directly run over by the road roller Ryu Minsik drove in. The soldiers on the tower had no idea what had just happened. Cha Pungo looked warily at the zombie that had been run over. He only needed one glance to judge their combat power. Ryu Minsik's secret, in Cha Pungo's eyes, ultimately could not be hidden. Before Ryu Minsik could even finish introducing himself, Cha Pungo's eyes flashed with ferocity, and he brought his axe down with murderous intent. But Ryu Minsik easily dodged it. The soldiers had no idea at all why Cha Pungo had suddenly attacked Ryu Minsik. When they looked more closely, Ryu Minsik had actually grabbed Cha Pungo's axe directly. Cha Pungo immediately ordered the soldiers on the tower to sound the red defense alarm. Because the guy standing before him was a monster, Ryu Minsik slowly spoke. As expected, I still couldn't fool your eyes, Colonel Cha Pungo. Cha Pungo had not yet had time to react. The axe was directly snapped in half by Ryu Minsik. If Ryu Minsik wanted to stay here, he had to first convince Cha Pungo. But relying on words alone would never work. So, he would use Cha Pungo's favorite method. He took a stance and told the other party who he was. You want to have a match with me? Live long enough, and you really do get to see every kind of madman. Cha Pungo began removing the protective gear from his body, casually throwing it onto the ground. How did you know that this kind of big talk just happens to pique my interest? Cha Pungo leapt first, launching an attack at Ryu Minsik. He was very curious about what kind of guy Ryu Minsik truly was. The red alarm was sounding over there, and now they had to evacuate everyone to the shelter. Cha Hairi was curious about what exactly had happened, but the soldier said he would explain later. At this moment, a captain from here walked over. Then he raised his gun and aimed it at Cha Hairi. Cha Hairi was confused, not understanding why he was doing this. The armed soldier stated that the monster who attacked the brigade commander at the unit's rear gate had mentioned Cha Hairi. For a moment, Cha Hairi did not understand what monster he was talking about. The armed soldier said, that guy is called Ryu Minsik. Everyone was somewhat confused after hearing this. When Ryu Dami heard it, her eyes instantly widened. On the other side, Ryu Minsik was still locked in fierce battle with Cha Pungo. He gathered strength and threw a punch, but Cha Pungo dodged aside. The wall was actually blasted apart by his punch. And after all this, you still dare to say you're human? Ryu Minsik blocked the kick coming from his opponent. Then his figure suddenly vanished. In the next second, he flashed above Cha Pungo's head. Cha Pungo reacted extremely quickly, immediately retreating to avoid the punch. Immediately after, Cha Pungo landed a punch on Ryu Minsik. Cha Pungo stopped moving, then grabbed Ryu Minsik by the collar. With a serious expression, he said, "Are you messing with me? You held back when you punched just now. You're going easy on me." Cha Pungo was right. If Ryu Minsik truly used his full strength, Cha Pungo would very likely die on the spot. Cha Pungo was also well aware that, from the moment he began fighting Ryu Minsik until now, every cell in his body had been sensing an overwhelming difference in power. Cha Pungo believed that Ryu Minsik must have another purpose in coming to him. Ryu Minsik, on the other hand, said that he needed his protection. Cha Pungo burst out laughing when he heard this. A monster like you still needs protection? The one who needed protection was not Ryu Minsik, but Ryu Dami, Ryu Minsik's daughter. Please allow us, along with the people who came with us, to stay here. After saying this, Ryu Minsik directly knelt on the ground. If Cha Pungo was willing to agree to Ryu Minsik's request, then Ryu Minsik was willing to do anything for him. That night, the people in the shelter room had already heard that Ryu Minsik was a monster. Everyone discussed it one after another, all relying on those crimson eyes to guess that Ryu Minsik might be a zombie. On the other side, Ryu Minsik was wrapped in iron chains and locked inside a prison. Before he was imprisoned, Cha Pungo had promised Ryu Minsik that he would take in the people who had come with him. But the problem was that Ryu Minsik's existence was far too dangerous, and Cha Pungo still could not trust him for the time being. Ryu Minsik voluntarily proposed a suggestion: isolation. If they could not trust Ryu Minsik, then they should lock him up. No matter how long it took, Ryu Minsik would prove that he was not dangerous. At this moment, a figure appeared outside the window. It was his daughter, Ryu Dami. Dami, are you alright? Of course I'm alright. The alarm had already been lifted, and Ryu Dami had only come out after receiving permission. Ryu Minsik apologized to his daughter. Because Ryu Minsik had failed to keep the promise between him and his daughter, Ryu Dami lightly tapped Ryu Minsik on the head. Without Ryu Minsik, the people would never have been able to arrive here safely. So please lift your head. No matter when, his daughter would always believe in her father. After hearing this, Ryu Minsik finally smiled with relief. Ryu Dami had to return before the 10 o'clock roll call. They wished each other good night, and Ryu Dami waved her hand. But after she had only run a short distance away, Ryu Dami could no longer control her emotions, stopped in her tracks, and secretly wiped away her tears. Ryu Minsik also silently lowered his head. At this moment, a soldier called out to Ryu Minsik, and told him that Cha Pungo was looking for him. Cha Pungo pointed to a location on the map. 20 minutes ago, through an acoustic detector, he had discovered a large number of survivor signals in Gupable Station. At the same time, he had also detected an unknown strange frequency. The core of Cha Pungo's plan was rapid maneuvering, sending only elites to carry out the rescue. As for the personnel involved, Cha Pungo first pointed at himself, then pointed at Ryu Minsik. Cha Pungo brought up the promise Ryu Minsik had made earlier. Ryu Minsik snapped the chains apart with a crack. He raised his head and asked, "When do we set out?" "Right now." The Gupable Station rescue plan officially began. The scene shifted, and the subway entrance in Gupable Station's southern section had already collapsed and been blocked off. The survivors sat leaning against the walls on both sides of the corridor, huddled together. The child in the woman's arms called out, "Daddy," and the person beside them wore a face full of disgust, saying he really could not stand this kind of noise. An older woman nearby told the man not to be so petty. At this moment, the child suddenly noticed that there seemed to be something on the ceiling. He raised his little hand and kept calling out for his father. His mother's heart instantly became uneasy, and she slowly raised her head to look. She vaguely saw half of a pale face. Suddenly, that face's eyes glowed crimson, and its expression also turned hideous, revealing spike-like teeth. On the way to the rescue, zombies covered the road. A blinding light flashed past, instantly knocking the zombies on the road away. Cha Pungo looked smug. "Isn't this vehicle of mine even better than a road roller?" Ryu Minsik nodded in agreement. Although a road roller has strong destructive power, its mobility is too poor. There were two variables in this operation. The first was that the subway entrance had already been blocked. The second, Cha Pungo pointed to the map on the tablet and said that there was an unidentified guy staying in the same sealed space as the survivors. They had to arrive as quickly as possible. Cha Pungo once again pointed to the map on the tablet. The ventilation openings here were large, and the survivors' condition was still relatively stable for now. Cha Pungo's plan was to quickly rescue the survivors through the ventilation ducts. Moreover, Cha Pungo had to save every survivor. Ryu Minsik slowly spoke and denied it. The operation would fail. Cha Pungo did not understand what Ryu Minsik meant by this, but Ryu Minsik could not tell him the truth, because Ryu Minsik had already experienced it many times. Although the timing was different, the same event would happen every time, and Cha Pungo would always formulate the optimal plan. But up to this point, not a single person had ever been rescued. The scene shifted, and the survivors slowly woke up from unconsciousness. The woman who had been holding the child earlier still had not figured out the situation and did not understand why she was hanging upside down. She desperately shook her body, loudly calling out for her child. After struggling for a while, she finally broke free from the spiderweb's restraints and fell heavily to the ground. She immediately looked around, searching for any trace of her child. The man hanging in midair shouted, "Hurry and get me down." She asked the man if he had seen her child, but the man had only just regained consciousness as well. "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and get me down." As soon as the words fell, the older woman crawled over in a bizarre posture. The man immediately felt somewhat surprised. A crimson light lit up in the older woman's eyes, and in the blink of an eye, she transformed into a hideous appearance, biting into the man in one mouthful. Before everyone could figure out what had happened, the man fell from midair. Then, the man also stood up in a strange posture, and even though half his head was missing, he could still move. Everyone froze in place. Only when it walked right up to them did everyone react and realize that the man had already become a zombie. One bite from this zombie was enough to swallow an adult's head. Everyone immediately began to flee, and no one understood why zombies had appeared here. As the woman followed the others and fled, she suddenly heard her child calling Daddy again. She followed the direction the sound came from, and made her way all the way to the railway entrance. Without even thinking, she rushed down, and the young man beside her could not stop her at all. The young man's father told the young man to stop standing there in a daze and quickly flee with him. But the situation before their eyes instantly made the young man turn pale with shock. Because in the direction they were fleeing, zombies had also appeared ahead. The woman ran downward all the way, following the sound of her child's voice. She firmly believed that her child was right ahead, but what she truly saw was the figure of a giant zombie. The zombie was still holding a headless corpse in its hand. She froze completely in place. The zombie suddenly began performing in front of her, imitating the child's voice and crying out "Daddy." The woman refused to believe that her child had become this way. She only hoped that all of this was fake, merely a nightmare. The zombie grabbed her in one hand, and was just about to put her into its mouth. Just then, a car engulfed in flames suddenly rushed out, directly crashing through this place. At the moment of explosion, blazing flames surged up with a roar. They caused extraordinary damage to the zombie. She looked at the scene before her, and for a moment, her heart was filled with mixed emotions. Cha Pungo had exhausted every possible method before, yet he had never been able to save anyone. What Ryu Minsik meant was that relying on human methods simply would not work. So only an existence beyond humanity could possibly change the outcome. This skinwalker would cause humans to fall unconscious before hunting them. It was a high-level spider-type zombie capable of mimicking human appearances. The zombie spat out spider silk first, launching an attack at Ryu Minsik. This type of zombie was extremely similar to a spider and was very easily harmed by high temperatures. Ryu Minsik seized the gap in its attack, and directly knocked it down hard. The nemesis of this type of zombie was none other than fire. Ryu Minsik ignited both of his fists and hammered it wildly. But within the zombie screams, it was still imitating a human and calling Daddy. Ryu Minsik continued suppressing it with flames, giving the zombie no chance to counterattack, then prepared to kill it in one strike. But just then, someone threw a stone at Ryu Minsik. The woman cried out for Ryu Minsik to stop, telling him not to hurt her child. Ryu Minsik was distracted for an instant, giving the zombie a chance to counterattack. The zombie opened its huge mouth and let out a roar, directly blasting Ryu Minsik away. The woman also fell to the ground because of the violent tremor beneath her. Ryu Minsik staggered for a moment, supporting himself on the ground as he slowly stood up. As the zombie continued roaring, it had already closed in above Ryu Minsik's head. The ground cracked with it, and Ryu Minsik was about to be swallowed by it. At this very moment, Ryu Minsik remembered that his daughter would always believe in him. So he had to raise his head. No matter how difficult the path ahead became, Ryu Minsik absolutely could not give up. The zombie was still roaring as it continued closing in. But very soon, the zombie was struck hard on the chin by Ryu Minsik's punch. The blow directly sent its entire body arching backward, but it was still imitating a human, crying out "Daddy." Ryu Minsik delivered a flying knee, viciously pinning the zombie's neck. The zombie flipped over and fell to the ground, vomiting everywhere. This was the zombie's true voice. That disgusting crying was the sound a zombie should make. Ryu Minsik declared that from now on, the only sound this zombie could make was screaming. And so, accompanied by the zombie screams, Ryu Minsik finally ended this battle. On the other side, the zombies were about to charge through the main door, but the people were working together to desperately block it. If the zombies broke through this door, the survivors here would be completely wiped out. Just as they were desperately blocking the door, thick smoke suddenly drifted all around. "There's a fire here. We're all going to die here. Shut that crow's mouth of yours." The people blocking the door suddenly realized that there was no movement outside anymore. Immediately after, both sides of the main door began to loosen. Then the entire door fell straight down. They were instantly terrified, but the one standing outside did not seem to be a zombie. Their faces were full of confusion. Who exactly was this man? Ryu Minsik brought the survivors to rendezvous with Cha Pungo's army. The total number of survivors was 37. in a completely sealed space where they could not avoid the zombies. Rescuing nearly 40 trapped people, with even the woman's child luckily surviving, was exactly what could be called a miracle. Ryudami looked at her father, Ryu Minsik, who was surrounded by cheering people. At this moment, he had become a hero who created a miracle. He gently waved to the crowd. The soldier beside Cha Hyori also could not help praising Ryu Minsik repeatedly. Cha Pungo announced that Ryu Minsik had passed the test with full marks. Everyone was cheering for Ryu Minsik. Ryudami stepped forward and tightly hugged Ryu Minsik. Even if Ryu Minsik was a monster, he could still become a hero. Not long after the mission ended, the returning soldier seemed to be completely exhausted. "You get some proper rest first. I'll bring food over later." After saying this, his comrade closed the door, but he did not notice the bump on the sleeping soldier's neck from a mosquito bite. That was precisely the beginning of zombification. The people were still immersed in the joy of celebrating Ryu Minsik's achievement. The place was filled with laughter and cheerful voices. Cha Pungo said that from the first time he saw Ryu Minsik, he had felt that he could accomplish great things. He just had not expected that Ryu Minsik could go this far. Cha Pungo smiled and said that he would have to rely on Ryu Minsik a lot from now on as well. On days like this, they ought to drink until dawn, but for now, they should still restrain themselves a little. After all, Cha Pungo was also taking into consideration that the relatives of those who had passed away would still feel grief. He handed over a beer. "Cheers, to those who have already left this hell, and also to us, who have kept living until the very end." Then, the two clinked glasses. There was one thing Ryu Minsik still could not figure out. "Why don't you ask me why I was so certain the operation would fail? And why don't you ask me why I became a monster? Aren't you curious?" Cha Pungo said that he simply knew, because his intuition had always been accurate. Moreover, he was not interested in Ryu Minsik's story. In this hell, there were still people who possessed the will to save others, and Ryu Minsik was one of them. Since that was the case, they were family. The current Cha Pungo had not changed at all from before. But Cha Pungo also had a question. Ryu Minsik had said his destination was D-City, but he did not understand why Ryu Minsik had come here. With Ryu Minsik's strength, if he had set out earlier, he should have arrived there long ago by now. Ryu Minsik answered that there were still things here that had to be completed. Ryu Minsik recalled his previous experiences, and every time he had been eager to act, the results had often not been very good. Cha Pungo could roughly guess that the reason had something to do with Ryu Minsik's daughter. "How did you know that?" Cha Pungo said he could tell at a glance. After all, the people closest to you in this world, yet also the most worrying, were children. Only then did Ryu Minsik notice that Cha Hyori had not come over. Cha Pungo gulped down a mouthful of alcohol, then waved his hand, signaling for more beer to be brought over. At this moment, Ryudami found Ryu Minsik, because she was a little tired and planned to go back to rest. Ryu Minsik was worried and wanted to walk his daughter back, so he said goodbye to Cha Pungo and left. Cha Pungo watched the two of them leave from behind. Seeing Ryu Minsik show that kind of expression, he muttered to himself, "Sure enough, all fathers are the same." Ryu Minsik wanted to head to D-City, but it would be difficult for Cha Pungo to let him leave so easily. Although he felt sorry, it was precisely because of Ryu Minsik's appearance that Cha Pungo's plan could possibly be restarted. A figure in camouflage flashed past Cha Pungo, and he thought it was a soldier bringing beer. But then he discovered that the soldier before him was clutching his neck, stammering that something had happened to the brigade commander. The scene shifted, and Ryu Minsik was walking back to the resting area with his daughter. He suddenly remembered what Cha Pungo had said. "The people closest to you in this world, yet also the most worrying, are children." Ryu Minsik suddenly called out to Ryudami. He had a question he wanted to ask his daughter. "I'm a zombie. Aren't you afraid?" Even though Ryu Minsik's current appearance was already completely different from before, Ryudami would still, without hesitation, regard Ryu Minsik as her father. "But are you really not afraid of Dad?" "Of course I'm afraid." Hearing this answer, Ryu Minsik's eyes instantly widened. Ryudami was afraid that Ryu Minsik would one day attack her too. She was already too tired and did not want to keep pretending anymore. She questioned Ryu Minsik, "Where is my real dad? You damned monster." At this moment, Ryu Minsik was awakened by his daughter calling Dad. Only then did Ryu Minsik realize that everything just now had merely been an illusion. Ryudami asked, "What are you thinking about? You look so serious." Only after a long while did Ryu Minsik finally speak. "Nothing." Seeing his daughter suddenly start coughing, Ryu Minsik immediately worried that something was wrong with her. He told Ryudami to go inside and rest first, and that he would bring her medicine shortly. At this moment, a chill suddenly rushed up Ryu Minsik's spine, and he immediately called out to Ryudami. Then he suddenly raised his hand and reached toward Ryudami. Ryudami was so frightened that she closed her eyes. In the next second, Ryu Minsik clenched his fist. His daughter did not understand what Ryu Minsik was doing. Ryu Minsik opened his fist and saw that inside was a strange mosquito. This one was far larger than an ordinary mosquito. At the same time, the broadcast suddenly rang out, "Black alert. Please take shelter immediately." On Cha Pungo's side, 1 second earlier, he had still been talking with his subordinate. In the next second, the subordinate's body began to twitch and contort. He instantly turned into a hideous zombie. Earlier, Cha Pungo had once discussed zombies with Ryu Minsik. Ryu Minsik mentioned that the zombies had been constantly evolving, becoming more cunning and stronger. The threat they posed to us would never stop. Thinking of this, Cha Pungo directly grabbed the zombie by the throat. His bench press could reach 230 kilograms, and he possessed extremely formidable combat strength. Cha Pungo grabbed the zombie's head in one hand, and directly tore it off by force. Cha Pungo did not understand why zombies that appeared inside the base. He ordered his subordinates to immediately transfer everyone to the shelter. Seeing that his subordinate was still frozen in place, Cha Pungo roared, "Hurry up and go! Do none of you want to live?" Only then did the soldiers react, immediately leading the survivors to begin evacuating. Cha Pungo did not understand how the virus had infiltrated the base. At this moment, he noticed the wound on the zombie's neck. Before Cha Pungo could figure it out, a new batch of zombies came charging over. Cha Pungo first kicked one zombie away. He casually grabbed a wooden stick, then followed up with another strike. He told one person behind him to go get his equipment, and another to go call Ryu Minsik over. Cha Pungo told them to move quickly. He would hold this place himself. He tightened his grip on the wooden stick in his hand. He raised the stick and struck the zombie hard. This was Cha Pungo's territory, the kingdom he had built with his own hands. He drove the wooden stick fiercely into the zombie's throat, then lifted it up and directly threw it away. At this moment, another zombie suddenly appeared behind him. Cha Pungo directly shoved the wooden stick in his hand into its mouth. At this time, another zombie pounced from behind. Cha Pungo clenched his teeth and charged forward with a roar. On the other side, Ryu Minsik was putting a safety helmet on his daughter. This time, he would absolutely not allow his daughter to take it off either. Ryu Dami felt that this protection was really a bit exaggerated. She asked Ryu Minsik, "What kind of zombie is that exactly?" Ryu Minsik answered, "Moskies, an ultra-small mosquito-shaped zombie. Once bitten by it, the victim will eventually turn into a zombie." This mutant was something Ryu Minsik had only seen once in his previous life. But this was absolutely not a reason for Ryu Minsik to run away. If Ryu Dami were killed, everything Ryu Minsik had done would completely collapse. Ryu Minsik knew the Moski's appendages would attack again, so he had to find the main body as soon as possible and destroy it. On the other side, Cha Hairi had also heard that mosquitoes were the source of the virus transmission. Minimizing exposed skin as much as possible was the advice Ryu Minsik had given. Cha Hairi froze for a moment, remembering the faces of Ryu Minsik and Cha Pungo. Then she let out a disgusted humph. Cha Hairi immediately gave the order for everyone to cover their skin as much as possible, then begin moving. She noticed that their brigade commander was not present. For a moment, the soldiers did not know how to explain. At this time, the person standing on the wall discovered a zombie had appeared outside the base, and its appearance was extremely strange. Just after he finished describing that zombie, he turned back, wanting to confirm the target again. Not far away was a toad-shaped zombie. It was much larger than an ordinary toad and also had crimson eyes. It suddenly opened a mouth that was more than twice as tall as its own body. It sprayed out a swarm of mosquitoes as large as locusts. At this moment, the person on the wall immediately reported what he had seen to Cha Hairi. Cha Hairi was also instantly shocked. The number of mosquitoes exploded exponentially, flying madly into the sky. The soldiers were terrified by the scene before them. Cha Hairi immediately ordered them to retreat quickly and withdraw into the buildings. She suddenly saw Ryu Minsik leap into the air, flying into midair. Cha Hairi was stunned for a moment by his agility. Before this, someone had come to call Ryu Minsik over to provide support. Unexpectedly, he had refused. "I'm just an ordinary person. You are the soldiers." Ryu Minsik did not want to leave, he wanted to stay here. But Ryu Dami placed the safety helmet onto his head. She told her father not to worry, the mosquitoes would not be able to bite her. Ryu Dami hoped that everyone here could survive, but she herself could not do anything. In the end, Ryu Dami held out her hand and said, "But Dad can do it." Ryu Minsik agreed to his daughter's request. This time, it was not only about protecting Ryu Dami, but saving everyone. Ryu Minsik had already prepared the flamethrower. Next, he would burn all those mosquitoes to ash. He continuously eliminated large numbers of mosquito zombies with the flamethrower. The toad zombie stared fixedly at Ryu Minsik. Ryu Minsik also noticed that toad zombie. After the two stared at each other for a moment, the toad zombie crouched down to gather strength, then suddenly leapt backward. It jumped as high as 20 meters, so exaggerated that it was shocking. The toad zombie's intention was obvious. Ryo Minsik knew that after releasing the mosquitoes, the other party was preparing to escape. He saw Cha Hyori below. Without hesitation, he jumped down, landing precisely inside the car. Then he opened his mouth and asked Cha Hyori, "Is it the one that made such a mess of our base?" Cha Hyori believed that Ryo Minsik would definitely have a way to handle it this time as well. Ryo Minsik did indeed have a way. Cha Hyori told him to deal with the toad zombie first, then prepare himself mentally. Because Cha Hyori still had many questions to ask him. If he used lies to toy with her again, Cha Hyori would absolutely not let him off. After hearing this, Ryo Minsik gently nodded. Cha Hyori floored the accelerator, driving at full speed as she chased after the toad zombie. The toad zombie arrived at a dark, remote cave. As soon as the toad zombie entered, it croaked wildly, as if greeting someone. What came into view were 5 eyes glowing red, along with teeth arranged like stones. That was the Slider zombie. Slider was a high-level mutant zombie capable of proliferating and replicating appendages. At this moment, it was smiling as it responded to the toad zombie. The toad zombie hopped around, as if taking credit before Slider. Slider was a host-type mutant zombie, and its main body mainly hid in the darkness, making it difficult to find. So to deal with it, a surprise attack had to be launched. Ryo Minsik teleported in and directly grabbed the toad zombie. Then he suddenly exerted force, pressing the toad zombie toward the ground, causing the ground to crack instantly. A swarm of mosquitoes was forcibly squeezed out of its mouth. The mosquitoes flew toward the direction of the light, but they were burned into charcoal by a burst of fire. Cha Hyori was lying in ambush at the cave entrance, holding a flamethrower in her hands. Before this, Cha Hyori had already predicted that they had to be prepared to finish things off. She told Ryo Minsik that the base had already been settled properly. The civilians and Ryu Dami were both safe. Even if a problem occurred, the defensive line could be restored quickly, something that could only be done under strong leadership. This was precisely the reason Ryo Minsik had chosen to come to Cha Pungo's unit. Ryo Minsik thanked her for telling him all of this. Cha Hyori said that the reason they were able to suppress things quickly was because Ryo Minsik had proposed the correct emergency measures. Ryo Minsik interrupted Cha Hyori. "It isn't over yet. If they did not eliminate the host of the toad zombie, the base would fall into danger again." Cha Hyori realized that they had to deal with that guy first. The key was that they absolutely could not give Slider any opportunity to take advantage. Ryo Minsik suddenly fell silent for a moment, then slowly spoke. Relying on only this was still far from enough. Slider's greatest characteristic was excessive proliferation. It would cause its appendages to multiply endlessly, in numbers that were almost impossible to estimate. They existed in an interconnected symbiotic relationship. As long as even one appendage survived, the host could regenerate. She asked Ryo Minsik whether that meant there was simply no way. This time, Cha Hyori still believed that Ryo Minsik would definitely have a way to solve it. That was right, Ryo Minsik did indeed have a way. He suddenly smashed into the wall, directly causing the cave entrance to collapse. Seal the cave entrance and trap Slider and all its appendages inside. The way to stop the proliferation was actually very simple. It was to lock Slider up, then keep killing until it could no longer proliferate. Thinking of the chaos Slider had created, as well as the threat it had posed to Ryu Dami, Ryo Minsik had agreed to his daughter's request. Killing Slider only once was nowhere near enough to quell Ryo Minsik's anger. At this moment, the battle was on the verge of breaking out. Outside, Cha Hyori looked at the sealed cave. She did not understand what Ryo Minsik was trying to do. Before this, she had received a notification from Cha Pungo. Cha Pungo wanted to recruit Ryo Minsik as auxiliary combat power. Ryo Minsik was not only the answer for our base, but also the answer for humanity. A voice came through the walkie-talkie, "Captain Cha, respond if you copy." Only when the second call came did she react. The message over the walkie-talkie seemed to be bad news concerning Cha Pungo. Cha Hyori immediately questioned loudly. The battle continued until the next day, when the sun was about to set. Ryo Minsik finally crawled out of the cave. The total time spent was 18 hours and 27 minutes. The number of appendages proliferated by Slider was approximately 7,130,000, and every proliferated individual had been completely annihilated by a transcendent being. Ryo Minsik's bones were twisted and deformed, but with just a few cracks, he twisted them all back into place. Black alert, operation complete. That night, after returning to the base, Cha Hyori was greatly shocked, because she had originally thought something had happened to Cha Pungo. Unexpectedly, Cha Pungo was leisurely eating snacks. He even asked with a confused expression, "What?" Looking at that expression of his, Cha Hyori thought she had seen a ghost. Because at the time, the walkie-talkie had clearly informed her that Cha Pungo was in danger. As a result, Cha Pungo looked disdainful and instead mocked Cha Hyori for still being so nervous. "You little brat, yesterday you yelled at me because I didn't listen to you. Today you're worried something happened to me, so you actually care about me that much." Cha Pungo had dealt with all the zombies in the plaza barehanded. All the civilians had also evacuated to the shelter. Cha Pungo had only suffered a minor injury at the time. Monster-like old man, only an idiot would worry about you. I heard that, you little brat. How dare you speak to your superior like that? At this moment, Cha Pungo finally noticed that Ryu Minsik was not present. He asked Cha Hyori, where did Ryu Minsik go? Have the toad zombie and the main body both been dealt with? She was silent for a moment, then blurted out a sentence. It was exactly what Cha Pungo had once said. Ryu Minsik is humanity's answer. Cha Hyori also seemed to finally understand a little. They waited for Ryu Minsik to return in triumph. The scene shifted, and Ryu Minsik returned victorious, with Cha Pungo waving at him. What humans could not do, Ryu Minsik could do. Cha Hyori also gained a new perspective on Ryu Minsik. The next morning, Cha Hyori was thinking about how to thank Ryu Minsik. She practiced several ways of starting a conversation, but they all felt strange. Cha Hyori, who had always been cold and proud, simply could not speak naturally. While she was agonizing over how to strike up a conversation naturally, the two of them noticed Cha Hyori. What is Captain Cha doing over there by herself? In this kind of situation, it's best not to say too much. Cha Hyori thought about it and wondered if she should just forget it, since Ryu Minsik had deceived her before. But at the very least, she should say hello. After all, Ryu Minsik had indeed saved their base. While she was hesitating, she happened to see Ryu Minsik and Cha Pungo seemingly talking about something. With 3 people present, it would not be so awkward, so she planned to simply shove the drink to Ryu Minsik and leave. Cha Hyori secretly peeked over. Then she heard Cha Pungo say, "What did you just say?" Ryu Minsik said that he meant exactly what he said. Tonight, Ryu Minsik and Ryu Dami were leaving this place. Cha Hyori quietly stood to the side and watched. Cha Pungo adjusted his breathing. "Why are you leaving in such a hurry? Are you going to D-City?" Cha Pungo considered that if something even more vicious than Slither appeared, everyone in the entire base would die. "Could you please stay a little longer, until my base's strength becomes stronger?" But Ryu Minsik said, "On what grounds? Why should I go that far for the base? Whether the people here live or die has nothing to do with me." After hearing this, Cha Hyori rushed out directly. She questioned Ryu Minsik, asking if he was serious about that. Ryu Minsik said yes. The only one he cared about was Ryu Dami. As for what happened to everyone else, it had nothing to do with Ryu Minsik. Cha Hyori pressed her lips together and angrily turned to leave. The drink she had prepared for him also fell to the ground. She reminded herself to wake up and stop holding expectations for that kind of monster. When Ryu Minsik chose the supermarket A route, things like this would occasionally happen. As the time they spent going through life and death together grew longer, Cha Hyori would sometimes develop feelings for Ryu Minsik. Ryu Minsik had to uproot the budding feelings before the situation developed any further. Because only in this way could Cha Hyori remain safe. Cha Pungo advised Ryu Minsik to think it over more carefully. Do not reject him so coldly right away. Calm down first and think properly. Cha Pungo once again questioned whether D-City was absolutely safe for certain. He planned to work together with Ryu Minsik to turn this base into the strongest shelter. Ryu Minsik admitted that it was a good proposal, but with their current strength, they could not do it yet, because there was already not enough time. In the last rebirth, the time when Slider appeared was the 10th year. But this time, it had only taken 10 days. If other high-level zombies also appeared at this speed, this place would become ruins before it even had time to grow stronger. So Ryu Minsik had already decided. He and Ryu Dami would head to D-City today. Ryu Minsik's attitude was extremely firm, but he still had another proposal. "Colonel Cha, you are actually curious too, aren't you? After all, your dream is to create the most perfect shelter. Please come with me and personally witness the survival or destruction of the D-City shelter with your own eyes." The D-City expedition team officially set out. Cha Pungo decided to go with Ryu Minsik to take a look at D-City, but before leaving, they had to first clear out all the surrounding zombies. Only then could they ensure as much as possible that the base would remain safe while Cha Pungo was gone. Ryu Minsik touched that familiar road roller. He was going to crush all the zombies around here into the ground. But nearby, there was a type of viscous zombie that was extremely troublesome. When everyone was helpless against the deadly venom on Viscous' body, Ryu Minsik told everyone this zombie's key weakness. Viscous was a nocturnal creature. When ultraviolet light shone on its skin, it would solidify the venom it secreted, greatly reducing its agility. At that point, as long as they cut off the protruding part in the center of its head, they could eliminate it. This final zombie could only be dealt with after sunrise, once the rain stopped. So they planned to rest for a moment first. At this moment, one soldier felt that the more he looked at Ryu Minsik, the stranger he seemed, and no matter how he looked at him, he did not sit right with him. He questioned why Ryu Minsik understood zombies so well. So what if he was an expert? Could he have experienced the zombie incident before us? Then he dragged Cha Pungo into it, saying there were not many shells left to begin with, yet they were still being used to fool around with him. Was that really appropriate? Cha Pungo silently arrived behind him, while he was still saying that Cha Pungo had grown senile. At that moment, he suddenly felt an intense pressure and immediately changed his words. If anyone said that, it would definitely be blasphemy against the great colonel. But in the end, Cha Pungo still gave him a harsh lesson. Ryudami stretched. Sitting for too long was bad for the body, and her waist and back were already sore. Ryu Minsik walked without making a sound, suddenly giving his daughter a fright. Why did you suddenly appear from behind me? You scared me to death. I was just afraid you might be hungry. Even so, don't suddenly show up like that. I still haven't fully gotten used to Dad's current face. After hearing this, Ryu Minsik instantly froze in place. He apologized to his daughter. I don't look like Dad anymore, do I? Ryudami softly said, yeah. The earlier illusion seemed to be turning into reality, and Ryu Minsik's heart suddenly tightened. Dad has changed a lot compared to before, hasn't he? I don't look like Dad anymore. It must be hard to keep treating me as Dad. Thank you for still being willing to treat me as your dad. What on earth are you talking about, Dad? How could you say that? This question had always circled in Ryu Minsik's heart, but he had never been able to ask it, because he was afraid of hearing Ryudami's answer. Why, when I have clearly already become a monster, is she still willing to acknowledge me as her dad? His daughter pointed at Ryu Minsik's eyes and said, the eyes are still the same, but not the color of the eyes. Before the zombie incident broke out, from the day we sent Mom away, all the way until now, Dad has had the same look in his eyes every day. A look as if he thinks I am the most pitiful person in the whole world. A look that is always filled with apology toward me. Every time Ryudami saw it, she would feel very annoyed. Clearly, the most pitiful person in the world was Dad. On that day 2 weeks ago, someone covered in wounds opened the front door and walked in. Ryudami saw that look once again. In this world, the only person who would look at me with such gentle eyes is Dad. Day broke, and the rain stopped. Cha Pongo gave the order, fire. The tank cannons roared continuously, finally inflicting effective damage on Viscus. Viscus could no longer enjoy the pleasure brought by heavenly thunder. Ryu Minsi gripped his axe and stepped forward. Then he leapt into the air, gathering strength as he swung down with an axe strike from above. He directly split Viscus in half. The soldier who had questioned Ryu Minsik yesterday stared in stunned disbelief. Champungo pressed down on his helmet and said, I understand your doubts about Ryu Minsik, but now it's no longer up to you whether you believe it or not. In this hell, the only thing we can do is believe in that guy. Other than that, we have no choice. Ryu Minsik successfully eliminated Viscus. During the 99th rebirth, it took Ryu Minsik 378 days to reach D-City. However, in this rebirth, after the zombie incident broke out, it took only 14 days for them to arrive at the D-City they had long dreamed of. Time went back to 11 days earlier, the third day of the zombie outbreak, in Dorongdong, D-City. Shinjai was stomped down and snapped a zombie's neck. All zombies have been eliminated. The defense of District Y in D-City was successful. When the command center received the news, they immediately became excited. But most of the forces deployed to other districts had either been completely wiped out or were out of contact. At present, only D-City had successfully held the defensive line. V1 had also completely lost contact after issuing the defense order 1 hour ago. The commander angrily slammed his fist onto the table. The zombies were increasing too quickly, and their area of spread was growing wider and wider. How exactly should they respond to this unprecedented disaster? Was the entire country really going to fall just like this? But D-City had not only held out for 3 days, it had even successfully completed its defense. As expected of the Blue Hawk unit, Alpha requests permission to expand the operational area to the Dongsan region. The commander was silent for a moment. Permission confirmed. You must complete the mission, Alpha. Alpha received. Now, the command center could only rely on Shinjaiwa. As long as he could hold D-City, there would still be a chance to counterattack. Shinjaiwu observed the surroundings. At this moment, someone had already discovered the zombie at the tip of the tower. That zombie seemed far stronger than low-level zombies. The scene shifted back to Ryu Minsik's group. Cha Pungo sighed, asking what in the world was going on. The D-City Ryu Minsik had spoken of was completely different from what he had imagined. And it was far better than he had imagined. Only then did he understand why Ryu Minsik had always been thinking about D-City. This place had completely exceeded Cha Pungo's expectations. The soldiers were also deeply shocked, never expecting that there was still a city that could be protected so completely. Only then did Ryudami finally believe that D-City truly existed. But Ryu Minsik felt a chill run up his spine. Ryudami was somewhat confused. From the moment Ryu Minsik saw D-City, he felt that something here was very wrong. After the zombie outbreak, every city would fall, and D-City was no exception. Only later did D-City begin to launch a counterattack and gradually expand its territory. By the time Ryu Minsik arrived in D-City, they had only successfully defended 3 districts. But now, the districts they had defended were even more numerous than back then. Moreover, it had taken only 14 days. An inexplicable sense of unease suddenly surged into his heart. The sixth sense he had gained after experiencing 100 rebirths was whispering to Ryu Minsik, something was wrong here. He had to protect Ryu Dami properly. From now on, he would not allow Ryu Dami to leave his side. Ryu Dami was very confused by this. Cha Pungo decided to hurry up and prepare, then enter the interior of D-City to take a look. At this moment, a soldier discovered something abnormal. There was something he had to report to Cha Pungo. He was not sure whether it counted as a problem or not. Just now, they had passed by a vast plain. The soldier had seen something there. It looked like huge lines deliberately drawn by someone. It was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye, and the soldier found it strange, so he used a drone to check. As a result, he saw this image. Cha Pungo also could not understand what pattern this was, but Ryu Minsik directly snatched the display screen over. When he snatched it, he accidentally touched the wound on Cha Pungo's arm, yet did not even glance at it. Ryu Minsik looked at the pattern, and his expression instantly darkened. This pattern made his expression completely tense. Cha Pungo did not understand why Ryu Minsik had become so nervous, because the image Ryu Minsik saw was none other than the goddess who had granted him 99 chances at rebirth. On the other side, the people in D-City Expo Tower discovered that 10 outsiders were searching Mount Suyang. The person before them stood with his hands behind his back, moonlight falling over him, the atmosphere oppressive and solemn. Bring them back safe and sound. There must not be the slightest mishap. Only then will she be satisfied. 2 weeks ago, we were like candles flickering in the wind. We lost our beloved ones, our family, our friends, and we lost all hope and joy. It was at that moment that he appeared before us. His name was none other than Baekdo Hyun. At this moment, he leapt down from the tall tower, landing steadily in the center of the stage. The audience below instantly went wild with joy. Baekdo Hyun had arrived. He was now the one controlling D-City, in other words, the mayor of D-City. In the next second, Baekdo Hyun began brainwashing the audience below. We are facing an unprecedented and enormous crisis. This is not merely our crisis, but a crisis shared by all humanity. But we survived. My dear citizens, did we survive merely by chance? No. It is because we are the final spark here, the hope that has been reignited. The audience below went wild with joy, firmly believing that it was because of him that the citizens had survived. Baekdo Hyun guaranteed to everyone that he would never let this final spark go out. Even if I must burn myself, I will protect this brilliant city until the very last moment. The audience below once again fell into a frenzy. Ryu Minsik, Cha Pungo, and the others stood to the side, watching this crazed scene. Then Cha Pungo questioned whether this was the D-City Ryu Minsik had spoken of. In reality, it was not. This was also Ryu Minsik's first time seeing such a scene, and this strange man as well. In the previous rebirth, the ones who rebuilt D-City had clearly been the Blue Hawk unit. But now, the Blue Hawk unit had been reduced to an existence that merely did odd jobs. But most importantly, Ryu Minsik did not see the leader of the Blue Hawk unit at all. Where exactly had the hero Shin Jae-woo gone? What kind of variable had occurred in D-City? And who exactly was Baekdo Hyun? Everyone, there is one more thing worth celebrating today. Our goddess has sent new companions to this city. They are right here. Please give them a warm welcome. At this moment, a smoke grenade flew past him, instantly bursting into a large cloud of thick smoke. They immediately bent down, covering their mouths and noses. While worrying about Ryu Dami, Ryu Minsik wondered who exactly had thrown the smoke grenade. The smoke gradually dispersed, and he saw Baekdo Hyun coughing violently. Immediately after, a person wearing a gas mask appeared. The attacker pressed a gun against Baekdo Hyun's head, then pulled the trigger. The citizens were instantly left shaken and terrified. Baekdo Hyun was shot and fell to the ground. The soldiers beside him immediately rushed forward, pinned down the attacker, and removed his mask. They discovered that he was actually Shin Jae-woo. At this moment, Ryu Minsik heard Shin Jae-woo's name. That person was Shin Jae-woo? Shin Jae-woo shouted, "Citizens, everything is already over. Please wake up. Do you still not know? You have been deceived by Baekdo Hyun all along. Now, everyone must wake up again." Yet what was terrifying was that Baekdo Hyun actually stood up as if nothing had happened. The citizens were somewhat shocked, but they were not frightened. Instead, they fell into ecstatic joy. Baekdo Hyun had come back to life. Shin Jae-woo gritted his teeth. "Baekdo Hyun, you monster. Today is truly an extraordinarily meaningful day. That hateful demon actually tried to assassinate me today." Baekdo Hyun raised his right fist and said, "Execute the demon." The day to judge the demon has finally arrived. But the citizens had already been completely brainwashed by him and also cursed along with him. "Shin Jae-woo, you damned demon. Did you think our Mayor Beck would be defeated by a demon like you? That demon must be executed immediately. With one raise of Baekdohayen's hand, the entire audience instantly fell silent. My dear citizens, thank you. The reason I was able to stand again before death is precisely because all of you are with me. All of you are the true citizens of the City of Miracles. The descended goddess has reignited the spark within our hearts that was about to go out. This shining chapter of history will be opened by the people, the final spark. It is the undying D-City, the eternal City of Miracles. The audience below once again went wild with joy. Ryu Minsik and the others looked at this insane scene, deeply shocked inside. There had always been one question in Ryu Minsik's heart. Only now did the truth finally begin to slowly surface. After Ryu Minsik experienced that strange event, he became a bizarre existence completely different from the past. Could it really be that he was the only person who had experienced something like this? The source of that unease he felt when he saw D-City. Everything he had experienced up to this point. It was like a complex puzzle whose outline was gradually becoming clear. It delivered the truth to Ryu Minsik little by little. Baekdohayen, like Ryu Minsik, was also a zombie. Time moved to night. Cha Pungo's subordinates advised them to return to the base immediately. They felt that this place was far too strange. The infrastructure was indeed very good, but everyone here was abnormal. He especially emphasized that Baekdohayen, that blindfolded lunatic, was the strangest. He believed that the shooting was nothing more than a staged performance, and watching it almost made him vomit. The attacker also seemed like someone arranged in advance, because he had seen the scene on the stage at that time. When the attacker pulled the trigger, that guy Baekdohayen was actually smiling. This is a very typical showmanship tactic. Who knows what tricks they'll pull at tomorrow's execution ceremony. We'd better not get dragged into it. The comrade beside him also expressed agreement, saying that if they continued to stay here, they would only invite trouble. Cha Pongo told them to go outside and wait first. He wanted to talk with Ryu Minsik alone. The two did not dare disobey the colonel's order, so they could only obediently withdraw. Ryu Dami vaguely felt somewhat uneasy. Ryu Minsik nodded toward his daughter, indicating that he was fine. Then he returned to the room and sat down across from Cha Pungo. You speak first. Baekdohayen, like you, is also a monster, isn't he? As expected, you noticed it too. Cha Pungo had already seen earlier that Baekdohayen, just like Ryu Minsik, was obviously not human at a glance. Cha Pungo had even thought that Ryu Minsik and Baekdohayen had colluded to deceive him together. Ryu Minsik immediately denied this guess. If that were true, Ryu Dami's situation would only become even more dangerous. To Ryu Minsik, Baekdohayen was also a variable. Cha Pungo said he understood. Now, they could draw a conclusion. Cha Pungo would take them back to the base. He believed that his own base was sturdy enough, but after being away for too long, he still could not feel at ease. D-City's infrastructure was indeed tempting, but his dream was to restore order to the entire country. And this place was more suitable than anywhere else as a frontier city for humanity's reconstruction. But now, D-City, shrouded in this fanatical atmosphere, was already beyond saving. Just as his subordinate had said, continuing to stay here would only drag them into trouble, so it was time to return now. Ryu Minsik also agreed with Cha Pungo's judgment. The next morning, Ryu Minsik came to the gate of the expo tower. The guards noticed him. Ryu Minsik briefly introduced himself, saying that he had come to visit Baekdohayen. The guard apologetically told him that Baekdohayen did not accept visitors. Then can you help me pass a message to him? As long as he hears this sentence, he will definitely want to see me. Citizen Ryu Minsik, what do you want to say to me? You should have already heard it, right? It's precisely because you heard it that you let me in, isn't it? Just last night, Ryu Minsik told Cha Pungo, Baekdohayen would never let them leave easily. At its core, this place was a massive cult organization, meaning they would be extremely resistant to us leaving. Ryu Minsik knew very well what such a cult organization could become like when faced with an extreme situation. If things develop to that point, we might be seriously injured. We might even lose our lives. If Baekdohayen was the same kind of existence as him, then Baekdohayen would definitely feel uneasy as well. Cha Pungo grew impatient and directly told Ryu Minsik to get to the conclusion. What exactly should they do? Ryu Minsik's plan was to confess his true identity to Baekdohayen, but Cha Pungo did not understand how that counted as a strategy. But Ryu Minsik had already prepared a special self-introduction. An existence that would make Baekdohayen suspicious, yet afraid to act rashly. An existence proving that in D-City, two tigers could not share one mountain. Citizen Ryu Minsik, I'll have you say that again. I, like you, am someone chosen by the goddess. So what you mean is, you and I, Baekdohayen, are both agents? Ryu Minsik spoke unhurriedly. A crimson glow appeared in his eyes as he said that was correct. At this moment, Baekdohayen finally began to feel uneasy. He said, I see. In the next second, he instantly made his move, slamming Ryu Minsik hard onto the ground. What do you think you are, daring to compare yourself to me? Come, let me see whether you truly are someone chosen by the goddess. or a sinister and despicable demon. Baek Do-hyun greatly enjoyed the feeling of being worshipped by everyone. But this time, he smelled an odor that made him feel extremely displeased. And it was the first time he had ever smelled it. He followed that scent, and strode toward Ryu Min-sik. Baek Do-hyun asked what his name was. When Ryu Min-sik stood before him, that unpleasant smell became even stronger. And now, Ryu Min-sik actually dared to openly provoke Baek Do-hyun. The odor that had annoyed him yesterday had not yet faded, and today it was even more pungent. Baek Do-hyun had originally planned to call them over today and ask everything clearly. He had not expected Ryu Min-sik to come knocking at his door to provoke him instead. What do you think you are, daring to compare yourself to me? Let me see whether you are someone chosen by the goddess, or a sinister demon. As soon as the words fell, Ryu Min-sik directly broke free from the suppression. The joints of Baek Do-hyun's fingers instantly twisted in different directions. Ryu Min-sik stood straight not far away, continuing to emit that heavy and pungent aura, making Baek Do-hyun even more displeased. This was clearly another provocation toward Baek Do-hyun. His fingers cracked a few times and returned to normal. He simply could not tolerate it and prepared to suppress Ryu Min-sik again. And so, the two of them completely broke into a fight. At this moment, the deputy mayor, who was most loyal to Baek Do-hyun, ran over. Because the commotion inside was too loud, the deputy mayor noisily demanded to go in and check the situation. He shouted at the two people at the door to open it immediately. If anything happens to the mayor, can you bear that responsibility? The two gatekeepers explained. But Mayor Baek Do-hyun said that no matter who it is, absolutely no one is allowed inside. But the deputy mayor's loyalty had already reached an almost fanatical level. Inside, the battle was intense, with neither side willing to back down as they fought fiercely together. Midway through the battle, one of Ryu Min-sik's arms was knocked off. Immediately after, his other arm was also broken, and the two of them were blasted away by each other at the same time. Baek Do-hyun slid several meters while supporting himself against the ground, then stood up again. He had to admit that Ryu Min-sik was at least not like Shin Jae-woo, the kind of guy who could only run his mouth. Ryu Min-sik could regrow both arms in an extremely short time. But Baek Do-hyun could not tolerate that statement about standing on equal footing, and as he spoke, he walked toward Ryu Min-sik. The scene that followed shocked Ryu Min-sik. That was power originating from the same source as Ryu Min-sik's. Baek Do-hyun began unbuttoning his clothes, making an exception to let Ryu Min-sik witness the blessing granted to him by the goddess, and just how powerful it truly was. He had only taken his coat halfway off, when the loyal deputy mayor barged in. The deputy mayor was extremely worried about Baek Do-hyun's condition. The conversation between the two of us just now was a bit noisy, wasn't it? I'm sorry for troubling you. Please don't say anything like sorry. As long as you are safe, that is already a great blessing. But the deputy mayor had not yet answered Baek Do-hyun's question. Why did you come in? Didn't I emphasize that no one was allowed inside? The loyal deputy mayor was frightened speechless, not daring to make even the slightest sound. At this moment, Baek Do-hyun heard a muffled sound, and turned his head to look toward Ryu Min-sik. What do you mean by this? Ryu Min-sik was kneeling on one knee, showing submission, and explained that there had been a misunderstanding. He had not meant to say that he was qualified to be compared to Baek Do-hyun. What he meant was that they were brothers who had received the same blessing. Ryu Min-sik was willing to follow Mayor Baek Do-hyun. Before this, Ryu Min-sik had long since formulated a plan. He would make Baek Do-hyun develop a favorable impression of him. Are you planning to kneel to him just like you did to me? Ryu Min-sik had his own reason, because those in power usually like this sort of thing very much. This sentence clearly hit Cha Pungo right where it hurt. As long as they gained Baek Do-hyun's favor, they would be able to leave D-City smoothly. An existence powerful enough to threaten Baek Do-hyun taking the initiative to swear loyalty to Baek Do-hyun. Such a proposal would definitely be extremely tempting, and Baek Do-hyun could not possibly remain unmoved. But Baek Do-hyun knew that Ryu Min-sik was deceiving him. You want to gain my favor, make me trust you, protect you and your companions, and then stab me in the back. Do you think such a clumsy lie can fool me? Ryu Min-sik pretended that he had been completely seen through, then said with a serious expression, even if I am deceiving you, what does that matter? After all, even if I wanted to betray you, I would only fail in the end. After all, you have already begun to suspect me, and your strength is above mine. To me, the safety of my companions is the most important thing. I would not do anything that puts them in danger. Now, do you still think I am deceiving you? The one and only representative. The plan advanced smoothly, and Baek Do-hyun began to waver. The more I listen to your nonsense, the more I feel you are quite to my liking. Baek Do-hyun ultimately agreed to let Ryu Min-sik assist him, and Ryu Min-sik's companions would also be protected. Loyal people must always remember one thing. They must always be prepared to offer their lives for me. Now, the position of deputy mayor has become vacant. But before that, Ryu Min-sik first had to pass Baek Do-hyun's test. This was Cha Pungo's warning. If he truly was a cult leader, then his methods would definitely be more cruel than anyone else's. Citizen Ryu Minseek, are you willing to accept the test? Night fell, and Ryu Minseek's trial officially began. The people here were like puppets who had lost their souls. Whether their expressions, movements, or their cries of execute him immediately, everything was strangely uniform. Shin Jaiwo was tied to a wooden stake. The citizens all regarded him as a demon. A person wearing a white shirt, a white vest, and a bow tie asked Cha Pungo whether he needed red wine. Cha Pungo had no mind to drink wine. The observant Ryu Dami noticed that they had all put on neckbands, and she knew there was definitely something being hidden from her. Ryu Dami wanted to know where her father was right now. But the two people beside her both ignored her. Cha Pungo now ordered them to take Ryu Dami and avoid things in the back first. They told Ryu Dami to calm down. But Ryu Dami was still questioning Cha Pungo, asking whether something had happened to her father. As a colonel, Cha Pungo's most basic ability was keeping his mouth shut. At this moment, Baek Do-hyun spoke, "Dear citizens of D-City, from this moment on, the execution ceremony officially begins." The audience below instantly went wild with joy. Execute the demon Shin Jaiwoo immediately. Immediately after, Baek Do-hyun began continuing to bewitch the crowd. He first wanted to tell everyone some unfortunate news. The hateful demon Shin Jaiwo had actually tried to escape this morning and had brutally murdered our deputy mayor. The citizens had no idea what the truth was, yet with just one sentence, they decided that Shin Jaiwo had done it, and instead began caring about why Baek Do-hyun was crying. "It is all my fault for failing to protect the deputy mayor. Even until this morning, my heart was still heavy with grief and sorrow. But now, Baek Do-hyun told them there was no need to be sad anymore, because the goddess has sent someone worthy of becoming the next deputy mayor. He will punish the cunning demon together with everyone." After saying this, Baek Do-hyun pointed toward the high place. His name is none other than Ryu Minseek. Ryu Minseek recalled what had happened earlier, after Baek Do-hyun caused the deputy mayor's death. The content of the trial was for him to carry out Shin Jaiwo's burning at the stake at 11 o'clock tonight. Usually, Baek Do-hyun personally granted death to demons, but this time, he handed that opportunity to Ryu Minseek. He placed the deputy mayor's headscarf on Ryu Minseek's head. "This time, you will be the one to execute him. Killing demons is the destiny of those who have received the blessing. If you can accept this destiny, then I will accept you." The audience below fell into fanatical cheers. Ryu Minseek told Cha Pungo the whole story in advance. "So you have to kill someone at the execution ceremony tonight? Enough. We're leaving this place right now." But Ryu Minseek stopped Cha Pungo and did not allow him to leave. Cha Pungo was extremely annoyed, and Ryu Minseek explained, "As long as Baek Do-hyun is still in D-City, doing that will be dangerous. Coming to D-City and getting dragged into trouble are all my own responsibility. As long as it is for Ryu Dami, I do not care about things like human morality at all." He lit the rope with the torch. The flames quickly spread along the rope toward the other end. They burned all the way to the flammable material below, igniting a raging fire. The fire grew stronger and stronger, and the person being punished was in unbearable pain. Seeing this scene, the audience became excited to the extreme. The demon Shin Jaiwo has been killed. In the next second, the thick wooden stake suddenly broke and fell directly into the sea of flames. Ryu Minseek observed the situation below. At this moment, Baek Do-hyun jumped up and pressed down on his head. "In the name of the goddess's agent, I declare that from this moment on, Ryu Minseek becomes Baek Do-hyun's trusted aide. Do you accept?" He was silent for a moment, then gladly accepted. "Citizens, please cheer for our new deputy mayor, Ryu Minseek." The entire crowd below erupted, shouting Ryu Minseek's name again and again. Not long after the trial ended, the people here began to respect Deputy Mayor Ryu Minseek. After the group had walked far away, he opened the door and walked in. He slowly turned back, looking toward Cha Pungo and the others. Then he removed the headscarf and eye covering. Unexpectedly, the person who appeared was not Ryu Minseek, but an unfamiliar face. "Nice to meet you. I look forward to working with you. I am Shin Jaiwoo, captain of the Blue Hawk Unit under the Jeryong Joint Headquarters." Cha Pungo was not surprised. He only sighed that Ryu Minseek was indeed a madman. "I do not care about things like human morality at all. But this time, there is no need for that." There was not much time, so he told Cha Pungo to listen carefully. Tonight, while gaining Baek Do-hyun's trust, he would secretly switch identities with Shin Jaiwoo and save him. In the sea of flames on the other side, Ryu Minseek slowly walked out from the blazing fire. This method was something only Ryu Minseek could accomplish. The next day, Baek Do-hyun personally watched the staff arrange the venue. They were preparing to hold the grandest inauguration ceremony for Ryu Minseek as deputy mayor. But Ryu Minseek only arrived here now. He apologized for being late. Baek Do-hyun recalled how Ryu Minseek had shown no hesitation when executing the demon last night, which made him very pleased. However, in the next second, Baek Do-hyun grabbed Ryu Minseek's face and warned him not to be late again. Baekto Hyun hated people who did not obey their master the most. Ryu Mincy could only temporarily obey. There was still some time before the event began, so he invited Ryu Mincy to have a cup of tea together first. He was still completely in the dark, believing that Shin Jae-woo had been burned cleanly away, but a bit of remains had still been left behind, such as a right arm. Shin Jae-woo had thought he had already prepared himself mentally, but when he saw Ryu Mincy's appearance, he still found it difficult to accept. Ryu Mincy's skin had been burned and ulcerated by that great fire. Avoiding eyes and ears to come find Shin Jae-woo was not an easy thing. Shin Jae-woo did not care whether Ryu Mincy came early or late. After all, if it had not been for Ryu Mincy, he would have already been buried in the sea of flames. At that time, Baekto Hyun had clearly been right in front of Shin Jae-woo, yet he could only forcibly suppress his anger. But judging from that operation to shoot Baekto Hyun, with Shin Jae-woo's ability, he simply could not kill Baekto Hyun. But Shin Jae-woo could confirm one thing. With Ryu Mincy's strength, he could absolutely eliminate Baekto Hyun. Ryu Mincy asked in return, why eliminate him? Ryu Mincy was now the deputy mayor, so he had no reason to do that. The reason he saved Shin Jae-woo was simply because he was able to save him. If there had been no other way, Ryu Mincy would have killed him all the same. But there was one thing that made Ryu Mincy curious. Why did Shin Jae-woo absolutely have to kill Baekto Hyun? Although he was cruel by nature, he had indeed defended D-City. However, in the end, this was only Ryu Mincy's side of the story. After hearing it, Shin Jae-woo suddenly smashed the teacup on the table, because he had to make Ryu Mincy understand what the real Baekto Hyun had actually done. From yesterday until now, have you seen any ordinary citizens on the roadside? The citizens are all locked in their homes and can only be sustained by drugs. They face the golden wings on the wall and repeat the same words over and over. Shin Jae-woo wanted to tell Ryu Mincy that the citizens could only come outside during gatherings, like puppets being controlled by strings. He continued speaking while gasping for breath. Baekto Hyun had indeed defended D-City with unbelievable power. He had also once fantasized that Baekto Hyun would become the savior who revived the nation. In the past, he had protected D-City together with Baekto Hyun, but strangely, as the recovered territory grew larger and larger, almost no survivors could be found, until one day, when they were searching near Mibong Mountain. He and his subordinates discovered an abandoned warehouse. Immediately after, inside the warehouse, they saw the truth of Baekto Hyun eating people. He was down below, gnawing on citizens, while many more citizens were hanging above. Baekto Hyun slowly raised his head, and realized that Shin Jae-woo had already seen him. At first, everyone froze for a few seconds, before finally reacting and realizing that the person was actually Baekto Hyun. At this moment, Shin Jae-woo's helmet had already been knocked flying by Baekto Hyun, and his subordinates had also fallen into complete chaos. The scar on Shin Jae-woo's head was proof that it had truly happened, so he begged Ryu Mincy to make the citizens of D-City return to normal. Considering Ryu Dami's safety, Ryu Mincy ultimately rejected Shin Jae-woo. In D-City, he could not go against Baekto Hyun's wishes, because he was only a father who wanted to survive together with his daughter. At this moment, he saw Ryu Dami walking over. She was holding washing supplies in her hands, specially brought for Ryu Mincy. Ryu Mincy was worried that Ryu Dami had heard something when she came over. But Ryu Dami had only just arrived and did not seem to have heard anything. Ryu Mincy took the washing supplies and told his daughter to go back and rest early. After Ryu Dami left, Shin Jae-woo still had one more thing to tell him. Do you really think Baekto Hyun has nothing to do with you? Every citizen here must attend Baekto Hyun's gatherings. Didn't you notice anything strange there? Among so many citizens, why are there no young women at all? On the surface, Ryu Mincy followed Baekto Hyun to drink tea. In reality, he had already made preparations. Through the miniature receiver, Ryu Mincy received the news that Cha Pungo and the others had already evacuated. Now, Ryu Mincy could finally fight without worry. He concentrated his power into his hand. He advanced at sonic speed, attacking Baekto Hyun's head. In an instant, he directly took Baekto Hyun's head. Ryu Mincy would personally eliminate every existence that threatened Ryu Dami. On the other side, Cha Pungo and the others successfully escaped. One soldier felt that getting out so easily meant all their previous worry had been for nothing. The soldier beside him told him that getting out was absolutely not that simple. If they could have freely passed through from the beginning, would those fully armed guards have shown that kind of expression? They had merely received an order they absolutely could not disobey. So the current method was only the option with the highest success rate. As long as Ryu Mincy could protect Ryu Dami safe and sound, he would not care at all what he himself became. Seeing Ryu Dami full of worries, Cha Pungo told her. Ryu Mincy said yesterday that he would come back as soon as he finished handling things. There's nothing to worry about. The Ryu Mincy of the past was like a fool, always silently suffering losses. Even when it was not his fault, he would always apologize first, and Ryu Dami had once hated him for that. Once, a man threw a cigarette butt at Ryu Dami. But that time, she felt that Ryu Minseek had become like a different person. She had never seen Ryu Minseek so angry. And last night, she saw it again. Just after she finished delivering the washing supplies and had not walked far away, she looked back and saw Ryu Minseek wearing the same expression as last time. She did not want to ask about anything else anymore. She only wanted to confirm one thing. Dad, he will definitely come back safely, right? Cha Pungo lightly tapped her on the head. His good daughter, who is worried about Ryu Minseek, is still here, so he will definitely come back. Cha Pungo could guarantee that Ryu Minseek would be back soon. After hearing this, Ryu Dami nodded softly in response. But when Cha Pungo said those words, the hand gripping the steering wheel was somewhat slippery. He lowered his head and looked at the cold sweat in his palm. In his heart, he silently told himself that he absolutely could not doubt Ryu Minseek's strength. But Ryu Minseek also had to be prepared. That guy Baek Do-hyun was absolutely not an easy existence to deal with. On the other side, the battle was still continuing, and Ryu Minseek was turning back to confirm Baek Do-hyun's condition. But Baek Do-hyun had already charged in front of him. Baek Do-hyun threw a punch, and Ryu Minseek braced against the ground as he slid several meters. Baek Do-hyun, trusted you so much. Why did you betray me? Baek Do-hyun reattached his head. As expected, this guy was not that easy to deal with. Ryu Minseek told Baek Do-hyun that from the very beginning, he had never been on the same side as him. Baek Do-hyun blocked one strike, but Ryu Minseek's next punch was already ready. While fighting, Baek Do-hyun continued mocking Ryu Minseek. Because in his subconscious, his own power was enough to suppress Ryu Minseek. You can't beat me at all. As soon as the words fell, his arm had already been forcibly broken by Ryu Minseek. Immediately after, another punch blasted toward him. With a thunderous crash, half of Baek Do-hyun's body was directly gone. Before he could even react, Ryu Minseek had already teleported in front of him. He was completely shocked by Ryu Minseek's speed. This punch smashed down viciously, and Baek Do-hyun had no time to dodge at all. He had just restored half his body, only to have one of his legs broken again. Baek Do-hyun could not believe it. That guy's strength had clearly only been enough to bend my fingers. In such a short amount of time. Why had he become this strong? Ryu Minseek continued gathering strength, preparing to press the advantage. Running away would not solve the problem. Baek Do-hyun would catch up sooner or later. There was only one way, and that was to completely end Baek Do-hyun. Just as this strike was about to land, someone suddenly opened fire on Ryu Minseek. That instant of hesitation allowed Baek Do-hyun to successfully dodge. Two soldiers arrived in time to support Baek Do-hyun. But Baek Do-hyun directly grabbed the two of them and opened his mouth to bite down. The pitiful two instantly became his food supply. Ryu Minseek charged up immediately after, but he was sent flying by Baek Do-hyun's punch, and only barely stopped after crashing into the wall. Ryu Minseek focused his eyes and looked. At this moment, Baek Do-hyun's body had already expanded several times over. This is utterly absurd. I turned you from garbage into a star, yet you want to end me, so go ahead and try. Baek Do-hyun, will let you see properly just how much the goddess loves me. When the cult leader Baek Do-hyun encountered the zombie outbreak, he chose to flee with the money, but was discovered by the believers. He rushed straight past the crowd, desperately running away while holding a bag of money. The believers realized that Baek Do-hyun had actually been embezzling the funds. They immediately grabbed Baek Do-hyun. The result after being caught was that he was directly sentenced to death by fire. Baek Do-hyun wailed in agony within the flames. His subordinate took the opportunity to take over the position of cult leader. The subordinate told everyone that Baek Do-hyun's heart had already been taken by a demon, and that the goddess was also enraged by his evil deeds. Only by gouging out Baek Do-hyun's wicked eyes and burning his filthy body could they calm the god's wrath. Baek Do-hyun was burned by the raging flames, desperately longing for someone to save him. Just as he was about to be completely swallowed by the fire, the goddess with golden wings that blotted out the sky suddenly descended. She bestowed some kind of ability upon Baek Do-hyun. At this moment, a violent blaze erupted from within the sea of fire. The people sensed that something was wrong, and saw Baek Do-hyun slowly walking out from the flames. He told everyone that he had received the blessing of God. I am God's agent. Baek Do-hyun bent down into a half-crouch. Then he suddenly leapt up, instantly appearing in front of Ryu Minseek. Fortunately, Ryu Minseek reacted in time and turned sideways to dodge the punch. Immediately after, Ryu Minseek felt a powerful pressure. Baek Do-hyun launched another attack. This time, Ryu Minseek was struck across half his face. Baek Do-hyun clasped his fists together, raised them behind his head, and smashed down viciously once again. But Ryu Minseek jumped away, causing the strike to hit nothing. Baek Do-hyun instantly appeared in front of Ryu Minseek again. He grabbed Ryu Minseek's head and directly threw him away. Ryu Minseek tumbled and rolled across the ground repeatedly, rolling dozens of meters away. Baek Do-hyun slowly walked toward Ryu Minseek. He continued mocking him. Trying to fight me with that little strength of yours? How overconfident. Ryu Minsik, I'm very disappointed in you. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something. He finally understood now. Why the goddess sent a vicious demon like you to my side. It was so I could judge you for the sin of defiling the goddess's blessing. It is because the goddess only trusts me, Baekdo Hyen. My goddess, please forgive my sin of ignorance for only awakening now. I will make that cunning demon, along with the demon's remnants, all suffer in pain until living is worse than death. I will be the one to judge them. At this moment, Baekdo Hyen still did not know that he had already fallen into Ryu Minsik's trap. Now was the most critical moment. Baekdo Hyen was about to pounce at Ryu Minsik. At this moment, a blinding light suddenly lit up. Shin Jae-woo pressed the button from behind. The intense light instantly blinded Baekdo Hyen. It threw his senses into complete disorder, causing him to fall directly to the ground. Baekdo Hyen supported himself against the ground and stood up. Before he could figure out the situation, Ryu Minsik spoke and told him, "This is photic dysfunction, which damages the visual nerves. You can only perceive the outlines of living animals through vision. Although your sensory nerves are sharper than those of ordinary people, the speed at which your vision recovers is several times slower. For someone like you, the thing you need to be most careful of is strong light." Baekdo Hyen wildly swung both fists and said, "Stop using these useless little tricks. Shut up and come out." His imbalanced senses nearly made him stumble and fall. The intense light and noise rushed straight into his brain, triggering neurological loss of control. If it was a nervous system that surpassed human limits, it would endure even more intense pain. In this state, all of Baekdo Hyen's senses had surpassed the realm of humanity, and precisely because of that, all his nerves were running wildly out of control. Only then did Baekdo Hyen realize that Ryu Minsik had already calculated even all of this. From the very beginning, he had pretended that they were merely competing in strength, constantly provoking Baekdo Hyen. He made him awaken this form, then pretended he could not beat him, finally luring him here. All of this, from the very beginning, had been planned by Ryu Minsik. Baekdo Hyen instantly flew into a rage. Ryu Minsik admitted that Baekdo Hyen's strength and speed were both far above his own. "Baekdo Hyen, you truly did receive immense favor." But what Ryu Minsik truly wanted to say was this. Compared to the power gained from the goddess's favor, the power that bursts forth to protect one's daughter is far stronger. Ryu Minsik had already put on the brass knuckles. Next, he would launch an uninterrupted beating against Baekdo Hyen. He would keep beating him until he could no longer recover. After 3.5 hours, Baekdo Hyen completely lost his ability to fight. Shin Jae-woo witnessed the entire process from the side. Ryu Minsik threw the brass knuckles onto the ground, and slowly stood up. Ryu Minsik successfully annihilated Baekdo Hyen. Shin Jae-woo sighed, never expecting that he would actually be able to see Baekdo Hyen reduced to this state. He believed that Ryu Minsik was the greatest contributor. Ryu Minsik, however, believed that Shin Jae-woo had provided the crucial information. Shin Jae-woo knew very clearly in his heart that even if Baekdo Hyen's sensory nerves went out of control, he would never be defeated easily. The reason they were able to defeat Baekdo Hyen was because Ryu Minsik was stronger than him. But just when both of them thought everything was over, the puddle of rotten flesh on the ground actually saw the goddess again and heard her command it to stand up. The flesh on the ground began to gather and reconstruct itself. Baekdo Hyen's second phase ended, and he officially entered his third phase. Shin Jae-woo clearly had not expected him to turn into this form. This was his first time seeing Baekdo Hyen in this form. But Ryu Minsik had seen a high-level mutant zombie of the Tardage type before. Its name was Tardage, and it belonged to the category of high-level mutant zombies. Only then did Ryu Minsik understand that Baekdo Hyen's true identity was actually a high-level mutant zombie. With no time to think further, Ryu Minsik grabbed Shin Jae-woo and rushed outside. If it truly was Tardage, then its characteristic was that the more it was hit, the tougher it became. They desperately sprinted outside, while Tardage's body grew larger and larger. On the other side, the people waiting to host the gathering still did not see Baekdo Hyen arrive. They heard a huge commotion coming from the direction where Baekdo Hyen was. 3 hours have already passed, and he still hasn't come. Something couldn't have really happened, could it? Stop overthinking it. Don't you know what kind of person Mayor Beck is? He must have urgent matters to handle. He'll come after a while. At this moment, a loud crash came from the direction where Baekdo Hyen was. Everyone was instantly shocked. They saw a zombie with a huge mouth full of fangs and a body twisted by mutation. The citizens immediately panicked. The people on the stage were also so frightened that they froze in place. No one knew why a monster had appeared inside the expo tower. Tardage opened its bloody mouth wide, scaring everyone into fleeing wildly. No one understood why a zombie would appear in the place where Baekdo Hyen was. Everyone was still waiting for Baekdo Hyen to come and support them. Little did they know that the fanged zombie before them, the one devouring humans, was Baekdo Hyen. At this moment, a shell struck the zombie. Shin Jae-woo appeared and began drawing Tardage's attention. It took the bait, and Tardage's pouch missed. Shin Jae-woo planned to get on the motorcycle and lure Tardage to the designated location. Before this, Ryu Min-sik had already told him the key information about Tardage. Tardage's outer skin was tougher and more resistant to damage than high-strength steel. Moreover, once it was attacked, its tissue structure would become increasingly solid and sturdy. Shin Jae-woo led Tardage all the way toward the expo building, but he was affected by falling rocks, and both he and the motorcycle flipped onto the ground. He collapsed at Tardage's feet, making Tardage seem like a monster that blotted out the sky. Tardage opened its bloody mouth wide, and Shin Jae-woo could now only wait for Ryu Min-sik to act. This luring plan was also proposed by Ryu Min-sik. Tardage's internal organs were extremely fragile, so he had Shin Jae-woo lure the zombie to the expo building, where Ryu Min-sik would deal with it. He took out the chainsaw he had prepared in advance. He yanked the chainsaw's pull cord. The instant the sound of the chainsaw rang out, Ryu Min-sik leapt into the air. He landed directly inside Tardage's mouth. Not long after, the chainsaw sawed its way out from inside Tardage's body. Tardage roared in agony. Ryu Min-sik began widening the cut toward both sides. After slicing open a massive hole, Ryu Min-sik crawled directly out from inside Tardage's body. Immediately after, starting from the top of its head, he sawed it all the way downward. Shin Jae-woo watched in stunned disbelief, and the citizens present were equally frozen in shock. Chao Pungo and the others stood on a distant mountain, personally witnessing Tardage being cut open layer by layer. Not long after, Ryu Min-sik directly sawed Tardage's head to pieces. Tardage, the high-level mutant zombie, was completely annihilated. Control of D-City was finally reclaimed. After Baek Do-hyun was chopped into pieces by Ryu Min-sik, Baek Do-hyun, with only a head remaining, heard the citizens calling out to him and was still smug, thinking that the citizens needed him so much. Ryu Min-sik had not expected Baek Do-hyun to still be able to speak, and could not help sighing that he really was tenacious. Baek Do-hyun told Ryu Min-sik that he would not die, even if this flesh body completely rotted away. As long as the citizens still revered him, he would live forever in this city. Ryu Min-sik directly stepped on his remaining head. He said that Baek Do-hyun was still so foolish even at the very end, and had forgotten so quickly the one person in the city who did not revere him. Baek Do-hyun was instantly shocked. On the big screen, footage of him eating people was being played. The citizens simply could not believe everything before their eyes. The dead deputy mayor had also been killed by him. In the warehouse, he had gnawed on young women, with many corpses hanging on the wall. With the close-up of Baek Do-hyun eating people frozen on the big screen, Shin Jae-woo stood on the stage once again. The citizens finally learned the truth. The citizens discussed it one after another, saying that Shin Jae-woo had actually not died and had even saved them from the monster. For a while, the citizens were still somewhat doubtful. Ryu Min-sik had already factored this into the plan as well. He knew that once Baek Do-hyun disappeared, D-City would inevitably fall into chaos. So in order to end this chaos, a new leader had to appear. He believed that Shin Jae-woo would do better than Baek Do-hyun. Shin Jae-woo, who had not been confident enough at the time, now had to step forward. He personally repeated the truth once again. Everything Baek Do-hyun had done was for the purpose of controlling the citizens. And what he had to do now was make the citizens wake up again. After hearing everything Baek Do-hyun had done, the citizens all raised their clenched fists, expressing their recognition of Shin Jae-woo as their new leader. Ryu Min-sik now left Baek Do-hyun his final words. Listen well, this city will be reborn, and no one will remember you anymore. Compared to exploiting people's will, the will to protect people possesses far greater power. Witness it yourself from hell. Baek Do-hyun finally roared Ryu Min-sik's name. Immediately after, he was crushed under Ryu Min-sik's foot. After that, they began cleaning up the battlefield here. Shin Jae-woo walked toward the soldiers, and the person who had captured him before could not help becoming nervous. But Shin Jae-woo only lightly tapped his chest, then nodded toward him. After Baek Do-hyun's death, D-City began rebuilding. Although traces of Baek Do-hyun still remained throughout the city, they would eventually disappear little by little. Cha Pongo and the others also reunited with Ryu Min-sik. Ryu Dami finally returned to his side. As long as Shin Jae-woo was leading them, D-City would surely get back on track. The scene shifted, and the D-City Expeditionary Force set out, returning to the base. Although Cha Pongo returned a little later than planned, unlike what he had worried about, this place had firmly withstood the zombies' attacks. They had once been extremely panicked over Cha Pongo's sudden departure. Now that they saw Cha Pongo again, they were truly relieved. The soldier beside Cha Hyri brought up where Ryu Min-sik was. Cha Hyri's eyes suddenly lit up. Cha Pongo told them that from now on, they would prepare for a large-scale relocation. On the other side, Ryu Min-sik stood at a high place. He had done it. Although he had gone through countless hardships and twists, Ryu Min-sik and his daughter had finally settled down in D-City. He raised his hand, responding to Ryu Dami. But he thought about what had happened after everything he had experienced this time. He had discovered an unpleasant fact. In this rebirth, no matter how sturdy the shelter was, as long as zombies still existed in the world, Ryudami's future safety could not truly be guaranteed. Ryuminsik had only one method left. Every existence that threatened Ryudami had to be eliminated. Ryuminsik would use D-City as his base. He would wipe out the zombies across the entire country, leaving not a single one behind. On the other side, at Dam Daecheong in D-City, although the water level was still within the safe range, the inflow speed was far too fast. It could cause problems with the dam's power supply system, and the most urgent task now was to lower the water level. The dam supervisor told the person standing at the edge to come back first, as it was dangerous there. But he discovered that the other person was motionless, with a dazed expression. The supervisor wanted to know why he had become like this. Then he turned his head to look at the calm surface of the water. A massive crimson pupil suddenly appeared on the water's surface, contracting sharply and giving off an eerie aura. On the other side, Jiryong unit was attempting to communicate with D-City. An hour had passed, yet there was still no response. They concluded that, in the end, all cities seemed to have already been occupied by zombies. At this moment, he suddenly received a notification. Within a 10-meter radius, a large number of zombies had appeared and were gathering toward this place. Moreover, the zombies were charging straight here. His subordinate asked the commander what they should do now. The commander took a few steps toward the gate, picked up the key on his chest, and told them, everyone relocate underground. Unexpectedly, this order was immediately discouraged by his subordinates. Because once all national forces lost command, every city would be completely destroyed. The commander told them that they had already been destroyed, and only this method offered a chance to counterattack. Another soldier was still anxiously waiting for replies from each city. Just when he thought there was no hope left, a city suddenly connected to the communications. The commander also immediately turned back to confirm the situation. It was indeed a reply from D-City's operational unit. He looked at the key in his hand and decided to believe one more time. The reason Jeryong unit was called a top-tier fortress was that not even a single drop of water could seep inside, let alone zombies. The commander encouraged everyone's morale, saying that as long as they could reclaim one city, there would definitely still be a chance to counterattack. At this moment, something seemed to fall down. The commander picked up the key in his hand, and discovered that a drop of water from an unknown source had appeared on it. He felt puzzled, and also faintly sensed something strange. When he looked up, he discovered a layer of transparent gel clinging to the ceiling. Water droplets were still continuously dripping down. That layer of gel began slowly wriggling, then suddenly opened a crimson pupil as huge as a wheel. 1 week after D-City's reconstruction, Cha Pungo was communicating with Ryu Minsik. Ryu Minsik urged Cha Pungo to come to D-City and regroup as soon as possible, but Cha Pungo believed that migration preparations always took time. Moving more than 2,000 people all at once always felt like the preparations were not sufficient enough. Ryu Minsik asked him again, "Have you persuaded everyone?" He replied with a smile, "Of course, except for a certain someone." Ryu Minsik asked who that certain someone was. "You know exactly who I mean. Of course it's Cha Hyri." At this moment, Cha Hyri's number of handstand push-ups had already reached 46. She was still thinking about the conversation between Cha Pungo and Ryu Minsik. That sentence, "The people here have nothing to do with me," still lingered in her mind. At this moment, an image flashed through her mind. Her arms suddenly lost coordination, causing her to fall directly to the ground. Cha Hyri sat up, as if this fall had finally made her wake up. Cha Pungo told Ryu Minsik that the little girl could not believe his words, and Ryu Minsik said he could understand. Cha Pungo responded, "But you can rest assured, someone I trained personally would not fail to understand the great significance of this matter." Colonel Chow was right. During this period when D-City had just been successfully reclaimed, facing threats that could descend at any unknown time, D-City's combat strength was absurdly weak, and Cha Pungo's army was a truly strongest force worthy of the name. If they could take root in the soil of D-City and continue growing, they would definitely make D-City the first stable human stronghold. Ryu Minsik told Cha Pungo to get ready as soon as possible. He would also, before Cha Pungo arrived, finish making all preparations. Jiryong unit is the heart of all the Ministry of National Defense's forces. Ryu Minsik told Shinjaiwo that he was preparing to head to Jiryong unit. Ryu Minsik had already made up his mind. When the last zombie horde reached D-City, the military strength here was not yet very powerful. The zombies that appeared back then were also not as troublesome as they are now. Shinjaiwa's command alone had been enough to hold those zombies back. A few years later, they discovered a top-secret file in the Dunsan Government Hall, beneath the Jiryong Unit General Staff Headquarters. There were high-performance military assets hidden away under strict secrecy from the outside world. After D-City obtained those powerful weapons, even the high-level mutant zombies that appeared later could be smoothly crushed. But now, they no longer had years to wait. Before another variable occurred, they had to obtain powerful equipment capable of protecting D-City. Ryu Minsik looked to the side and discovered that two people had arrived. Second Lieutenant Eom Jungian and Lieutenant Han Tani from Shin Jaiwa's unit. These were the two people Shin Jaiwa had specially sent. Because they had resisted Baek Do-hyun, they were locked in the basement of the exhibition hall. They were loyal and devoted, willing to sacrifice even their lives to complete their orders. Even Baek Do-hyun had wanted to take them under his command and could not bear to kill them. So Shin Jaiwa believed that they would definitely be able to help Ryu Minsik. The road to Jiryong Unit's underground area was certain to be extremely dangerous. Ryu Minsik asked, "Are you two ready?" The two nodded at the same time. And so, Ryu Minsik led the two of them and officially headed toward the heart of the military. In the office over at Dam Daecheong, the landline kept ringing nonstop, yet no one ever answered. Because after experiencing that eerie giant pupil incident, everyone here had already been completely dried out. As a result, no one dealt with the rising water level, and the water surface had even already crossed over the dam. The water pressure began to climb sharply, and cracks soon appeared in the dam. In the end, the flood completely burst through the dam. The scene shifted, and zombies had actually appeared inside Jiryong Unit's underground top-secret area. They suddenly seemed to be attracted by something. All of them charged in the same direction in perfect unison. This shell was the first greeting gift sent to the zombies. Immediately after, they launched a fierce assault inward, mercilessly pouring bullets into the zombie horde. After eliminating all the zombies closest to them, Han Tani removed the protective equipment on her head. This place belonged to a top-secret area, and even the second lieutenant and lieutenant had not known of its existence. Although it had been some time since they last fought, their skills had still not declined. But compared with the person leading them, they seemed somewhat insignificant. After all, it was Ryu Minsik and Shin Jaiwa who had ended Baek Do-hyun back then and restored D-City to normal. Judging from how easily he annihilated the zombies, he gave off an overwhelming sense of pressure. Ryu Minsik smiled at Han Tani, leaving her momentarily dazed. To hide her shyness, she pretended to cough, while Eom Jungian commented that, with Ryu Minsik's strength, he alone would be enough to break into this place. Ryu Minsik, however, said that they would be a great help to him, because from now on, even Ryu Minsik alone would find things difficult. According to Ryu Minsik's memories from his previous rebirth, this was an area they had to pass through on the way to the armory. After opening the door, two mid-level zombies would launch a surprise attack, and this memory was especially vivid in his mind. At that time, inside the small auxiliary room to the north rear of this place, 11 bodies that had only recently died had also been discovered. They were all uninfected human corpses. They had endured for more than a year in that dark space, yet in the end, they still had not managed to escape. As Ryu Minsik thought of this, he had also just finished entering the password, and he hoped that this time he could save them. After observing, Eom Jungian, as a second lieutenant, wondered how Ryu Minsik could accurately know the location and password of the top-secret area. Ryu Minsik said it was a long story, but in short, he had seen it in an important document. More importantly, after the door opened, zombies should launch a surprise attack. From now on, we are officially entering the underground area, so please be extremely careful. The base gate slowly opened, but what they saw was soldiers standing inside, and there was more than just one. When the two saw survivors, they both felt a wave of relief. They thought that Ryu Minsik's prediction had been wrong this time. But in the next second, they saw Ryu Minsik reveal a tense expression. The two still had not understood the situation before them. But when they looked at those survivors again, they discovered that those people were not normal at all. The head of a high-level mutant zombie first slowly revealed itself. In the end, it exposed its true appearance. While the two were panicking, suddenly, a fleshy worm crawled out from inside the door. The worm leapt fiercely, opening its mouth full of fangs, biting through Eom Jungian's combat uniform and directly burrowing into his body. Eom Jungian immediately felt an intense discomfort, and his whole body began to tremble. Immediately after, something resembling a tentacle burst out from his eye socket. That tentacle even continued growing, and more also drilled out from his back. Han Tani did not run away. She still wanted to wake Eom Jungian. At this moment, Ryu Minsik at the side grabbed her wrist, lifted her into his arms, and immediately turned around to flee. Those worms prey on living hosts and occupy their bodies. They are omnivorous parasitic mutant zombies. Their reproductive speed is even beyond imagination, and both zombies and humans are targets for their parasitism. Although he did not understand why this type of zombie had appeared here, right now, all the survivors here had already been parasitized. Ryu Minsik had to focus and dodge these zombies. He absolutely could not let the parasites leave this place, or D-City would fall into danger. On the other side, at the shooting range, Shin Jaiwoo praised her, Your accuracy has improved compared to this morning, but your horizontal deviation when shooting is too large. After enhanced training, you will be reassessed. Shinjaiwo asked Ryudami if she understood. Ryudami said she understood. Before this, it was Ryudami who had taken the initiative to ask Shinjaiwo to train her. In an apocalypse like this, a girl like her simply could not survive alone. The reason she had been able to live until now was entirely because Ryu Minsik had always been protecting her. But she did not want to stay like this forever. Even if she could not be of much help, she did not want to keep dragging Ryu Minsik down. Ryudami asked Shinjaiwo to arrange training for her, as this was a way for her to protect herself. Just like that, she had already trained for 5 days. If this level of training intensity were given to an ordinary female trainee, she would have fallen behind long ago. But Ryudami completed it well, and her willpower was absolutely not ordinary, as expected of Ryu Minsik's daughter. At this moment, a soldier hurried over and reported an emergency to Shinjaiwo. Shinjaiwo had thought it was a zombie attack, but what he heard was news that Dam Daecheong had been destroyed. He simply could not believe it. Communications with that area had been cut off this afternoon, and after sending people to confirm, they discovered that all the managers were dead and the dam had also suffered large-scale damage. Shinjaiwo immediately pressed for details on the disaster situation. According to the projected route, the water should have flowed along the Jiam River confluence area toward Chongsan, but the water flow seemed to possess a will of its own and suddenly changed direction. Moreover, its target was precisely Jeryong unit in the direction of Jeryongkian. Over at Jeryongkian, just as the soldier had said, the flood was surging toward Jeryong unit. After hearing this, Shinjaiwo immediately ordered his subordinates to issue an alert. They also had to rescue all personnel deployed to Jeryong unit and notify every department to enter emergency combat readiness. His subordinate worried that it would be dangerous for Shinjaiwo to go alone and planned to form a special task force. But now there was no time and no spare manpower. So in the end, Shinjaiwo had his subordinate take charge of coordinating everything and report to him at any time. Then, he got on his motorcycle and set off at full speed. Because this situation could very likely put Ryu Minsik in danger. After they eliminated Baek Do-hyeon that time, Ryu Minsik had once asked Shinjaiwo a question that shocked him. "Can you kill me?" Shinjaiwo thought he had misheard. "What do you mean by that?" After Ryu Minsik was reborn in this bizarre body, there had always been one question in his heart. Can I actually die? This question remained with him until after his battle with Baek Do-hyeon. He finally found the simplest methods that could kill him. The first was repeated death at a high frequency, so fast that he had no time to recover. And the simplest and most effective method was prolonged suffocation. Only then would Ryu Minsik truly die. On the other side, underground in Jeryong unit, Ryu Minsik and the others were being relentlessly pursued by the high-level mutant zombie. While opening fire, Han Tani shot at the parasites chasing closely behind them. Ryu Minsik still did not forget to tease Han Tani in the middle of it all. "You can still shoot this accurately in this position." Her cheeks immediately grew hot. "Save that kind of comment for later. The problem is what we do now." The parasites could easily pierce through other biological tissue, but they could not bite through sturdy walls. So their hope lay at the end of the corridor in area G1 on the southeast side of Jeryong unit. In Ryu Minsik's memory, it was that door up ahead. He shouted G1, and as soon as the words fell, the input console was awakened. G1 bunker entry and exit authentication procedure initiated. Left eye iris recognition procedure will now begin. Before the prompt even finished, he shouted, "Activate emergency authentication procedure." He directly spoke the password ahead of time. The G1 input console lit up red. "Password correct. Opening now." Ryu Minsik quickly sent Han Tani inside. The special blast door began to close, and the zombie's hand that had reached inside was directly severed by the door. Han Tani opened fire and eliminated the parasites that had gotten inside, only then finally catching her breath. She turned her head and asked Ryu Minsik what kind of place this was. At this moment, she suddenly realized that Ryu Minsik had not come inside. Outside the door, Ryu Minsik had already been firmly grabbed by the high-level mutant zombie. No matter how he struggled, he could not break free. The parasitized zombies, covered in parasites, charged toward him. Then, Ryu Minsik was bitten by the parasites, and they began continuously burrowing into his body. He sensed that one parasite had already entered his body. Moreover, more and more parasites were pouncing toward him. On the other side, Shinjaiwo did not even park the vehicle properly before rushing upstairs in a hurry. He still could not understand the words Ryu Minsik had said back then. "Why tell me the method, and why ask me to kill you? You may not understand me, but I understand you very well. You are more righteous than anyone and possess an extremely strong sense of responsibility. You are someone capable of making difficult choices for the greater good." After Ryu Minsik's battle with Baek Do-hyeon, he realized that he was already different from before. Ryu Minsik asked Shinjaiwo whether he could tell. Maybe one day, I will also become an uncontrollable mutant zombie. So please, if that day truly comes, kill me directly. I hope that, to Ryudami, I will remain her father until the very end. Because I do not want to remain in Ryudami's memories, in the form of a monster. At this moment, Ryu Minsik was already about to be controlled by the parasites. He struggled with all his strength, just to search for the slightest chance. The high-level mutant zombie heard his painful roar, and seemed to become even more excited. Just then, several mutated tentacles suddenly destroyed all the zombies before him. Ryu Minsik had once made a promise to himself that before his daughter's world returned to normal, even if he died, he absolutely could not fall. Unexpectedly, it was precisely through this astonishing willpower that the parasites inside Ryu Minsik's body were instead controlled by him. Thanks to the parasites entering Ryu Minsik's body, he awakened parasite mode. The situation where he had just been suppressed by the high-level mutant zombie was instantly and completely reversed by Ryu Minsik. The current him was not so easy to deal with. The parasitized zombie before him charged toward him, but Ryu Minsik grabbed it in one hand, raised it high, and directly crushed it. Immediately after, the rest of the parasitized zombies swarmed forward. Ryu Minsik crouched halfway down and drew his arm back tightly. Then he swung out tentacles as hard as steel bars, directly piercing through the zombies. The outer forms of the eliminated zombies began to melt, writhing as they gathered together. In the end, they turned into a massive lump of flesh covered in several eyes, letting out a nauseating cry. Ryu Minsik stood there with his head lowered, then suddenly raised his head, and charged toward the lump of flesh. Han Tani heard waves of loud crashes coming from outside, and did not dare relax in the slightest. When the door opened again, Ryu Minsik standing before her instantly left her frozen in place. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Lieutenant Han. Are you alright? I thought this place was the safest, and it seems my judgment was correct. What a relief." Han Tani did not hear a single word, because right now, all of her attention was on Ryu Minsik's face, which was the same as the zombies from just now. Could Mayor Ryu Minsik have been infected? Ryu Minsik turned his head and told Han Tani, "Although I have become a zombie, I am still me." She found it unbelievable. "You should know, right? For me, something like this really can happen." After hearing Ryu Minsik's words, Han Tani slowly nodded. Ryu Minsik only smiled faintly. He thought that this was different from the deaths he had experienced in his previous life. It was more like being forcibly pulled back from the gates of hell. It was just like the moment when Ryu Minsik was surrounded by the zombie horde when the zombie crisis had first broken out. Although the situation was completely different, the feeling filling his heart was exactly the same as back then. That feeling was his will to stay by Ryudami's side and protect her. Perhaps it was not that he had saved Ryudami, but that Ryudami had saved him. But the current situation was that even inside this iron barrel-like underground fortress, a variable seemed to have occurred. Ryu Minsik had seen the corpses of the soldiers here in his previous life. At that time, those people had not been infected, but had chosen to end their own lives with their own hands. Where had they gone? What had happened here before? At this moment, Ryu Minsik saw a key on the ground. It was none other than the authentication key, the underground of Jiryong unit, and the crimson door located at the end of an even lower, narrow corridor. This door also had another codename, Pluto's door. That door belonged to the highest level area here. In the entire building, only one person had the authority to approach Pluto's door. That person was Major General Guak Sunchul, commander of the General Command Headquarters. But he had failed to stop this disaster and could not bear the overwhelming guilt. In the end, he destroyed the only key to Pluto's door and chose to escape everything through death. What Ryu Minsik could not understand was that now, this key had been thrown on the ground completely intact, as if someone had deliberately left it there. This question made Ryu Minsik feel astonished. At this moment, in a corner of the ceiling that no one noticed, a shadow quietly swept past. On the other side, Shinjaiwa flew a helicopter to Jiryonkian. He immediately picked up the walkie-talkie and connected to the communication channel, reporting the situation. After Dam Daecheon collapsed, the floodwaters pouring out were rapidly surging into Jiryonkian. The entire Jiryong unit area is being submerged. Headquarters, please evacuate immediately. This is Alpha. Whoever receives this, please respond immediately. Ryu Minsik suddenly raised his head and looked toward the ceiling. For an instant, he felt as if someone was watching him, but it might also have just been an illusion. At this moment, Han Tani discovered something unusual on the ground. It looked like a string of numbers someone had carved with a knife. She quietly read that string of numbers aloud. According to Ryu Minsik's observation, it looked like a 13-digit number hastily carved by someone. And this was also the first time Ryu Minsik had encountered this variable. He also did not know what this string of numbers represented. Ryu Minsik passed through the underground fortress and now planned to leave this place first. Han Tani asked him whether they were going to the warehouse or going back to reorganize D City. Ryu Minsik told her neither. They were going to a lower level deeper than this place. Only after hearing what he meant did Han Tani realize that there was actually an even deeper lower level here. There was technology there that could strengthen D-City, as well as the key to restarting humanity. But this also meant that the place would certainly be incomparably dangerous. They would experience something even more perilous than what had happened just now. Ryu Minsik asked Han Tani whether she was willing to go with him. She promised that she was absolutely loyal, and since she had decided to pledge allegiance to Ryu Minsik, she would follow him to the end. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly as he said, "Then let us head to the Crimson Door." Han Tani was ready at any time. At the same time, a faint patch of pale white vaguely appeared beneath the table. It was an eye with a crimson pupil, watching them. On the other side, Shin Jaiwoo's subordinate, Park Jaiwon, prepared to organize the situation and report it to Shin Jaiwoo. The soldiers had already made arrangements according to his instructions, and he told them to report to him immediately if anything happened. Park Jaiwon thought back to that time and felt that he really should have stopped Shin Jaiwoo and made him stay here, because D-City could be submerged by the flood at any moment. Moreover, Dam Daecheong had already lost its power supply capacity, and even if emergency generation was activated, it would only be enough to last 1 hour. After that, the entire city would fall into darkness. After listening to his report, Shin Jaiwoo was silent for a moment. Then he opened his mouth and ordered, "Park Jaiwon, evacuate all citizens to higher ground. Keep power only for essential facilities, and put the entire city into power-saving mode. Contact Sergeant Kim Munsik, confirm the cause of Dam Daecheon's collapse and whether it can be repaired, and have him study every feasible plan." Kim Munsik immediately made the arrangements. Park Jaiwon still felt uneasy about Shin Jaiwoo not being in D-City. Shin Jaiwoo told Park Jaiwon that he fully understood the seriousness of the situation. There was still hope of survival now, and he could not abandon his subordinates. Moreover, Ryu Minsik was an indispensable figure in maintaining the survival of the city. Shin Jaiwoo gave himself only 30 minutes. If he could not find Ryu Minsik, he would immediately return to the city. Shin Jaiwoo hovered over Jiryong unit, calling Ryu Minsik's name and searching for his traces. On the other side, Pluto's door. In the ancient corridor, there was a rust-covered red iron door. This door had to be opened with the authentication key. This door had not been mentioned by anyone for 33 years, and for 68 years, no one had been allowed to enter. Those who knew this top-secret information called this place the Chamber of Pluto, and the very few who knew the truth called this place the Ghost Warehouse, because many heavy weapons were stored here. Han Tani found it unbelievable. Beside the Crimson Door, a sentence was carved in English. Construction began in 1958 and was completed in 1991. Ryu Minsik recalled a report he had once happened to see in a newspaper. Tactical nuclear weapons were deployed in 1985, and after the denuclearization declaration was issued in 1991, all weapons were withdrawn. According to official records at the time, the maximum number of weapons had once reached 950. It turned out that these weapons had not been destroyed. Instead, they had remained preserved beneath Jiryong unit until today. Ryu Minsik clenched his fist. There was one thing he could be certain of. This place possessed the power to end the zombie crisis all at once. At this moment, he was suddenly awakened by Han Tani's shout. Ryu Minsik then explained that he had just been thinking about something. But in truth, he had already begun feeling that something was not quite right with himself, a sensation as if something did not belong to him. He had to stay fully alert, because this power could not only eliminate zombies, it could also bring every city to destruction. He suddenly discovered that there was actually another Crimson Door below. What kind of place was that? Han Tani asked whether they should go back and report to their superiors, while Ryu Minsik planned to first confirm the facility's condition. At this moment, someone suddenly spoke loudly. A pleasure, welcome." That person appeared before the two of them. "I am very glad to see you." Han Tani recognized the other party as Major General Guak Sungchil, but Ryu Minsik stood in front of Han Tani and questioned who the person before them really was. The other party smiled, and a huge eye with a crimson pupil suddenly opened on his forehead. Then he said, "So you discovered me after all." In the next second, the other party's body began swelling rapidly, directly tearing apart the military uniform on his body. Several mocking phrases like "I've been found out," "What a shame" kept coming from his body. The ones speaking were the countless human faces growing on his back. "You clearly know nothing." It sneered at Ryu Minsik. It narrowed its eyes halfway, then suddenly leapt high into the air. Ryu Minsik discovered that this guy's speed was shockingly fast. This was the second one after Baek Do-hyun. It was also a mutant zombie he had never seen in his previous life. Fighting a zombie whose traits he did not understand in this place was far too dangerous. He grabbed Han Tani and ordered her to jump down immediately. She received the order, then leapt down. Ryu Minsik extended tentacles as hard as steel bars. They smashed fiercely into the zombie. Ryu Minsik froze on the spot. The mutant zombie was completely unharmed, only staring at him with that huge eye. After an explosive sound, Ryu Minsik was shaken back several steps. Judging from the situation just now, he had already understood that this guy's skin hardness was absurdly strong, and he could not harm it at all. If the battle dragged on too long, an uncontrollable situation might occur. No matter what, Ryu Minsik had to find a way. At this moment, the mutant zombie called out Ryu Minsik's name, leaving Ryu Minsik in disbelief. Ryu Minsik, you're curious, aren't you? You clearly know nothing. Do you want to know? Should I tell you myself? Ryu Minsik had never encountered a mutant zombie that retained reason and also knew him. What exactly was this guy? He tried speaking with the zombie. Have you been following us all along? The mutant zombie pointed at itself, then burst into mocking laughter. You say I followed you, came to the underground fortress, and then came here? You say all of this is my masterpiece? Ryu Minsik knows nothing. Ryu Minsik is a big fool. 1 second, the mutant zombie was still laughing while clutching its stomach. In the next second, it suddenly launched a surprise attack at Ryu Minsik. During their stalemate, the mutant zombie kept speaking non-stop. Ryu Minsik's eyes are so annoying. Do you think you're so impressive? You know nothing. You are nothing more than Baekdo Hyen. Hearing it mention Baekdo Hyen, Ryu Minsik's heart was shocked once again. The mutant zombie took the opportunity to fling Ryu Minsik away. He slid several meters while bracing himself against the ground, completely unable to understand why this guy even knew about Baekdo Hyen. The mutant zombie raised both hands and said as it walked over, Baekdo Hyen, God's agent, was nothing more than a toy. The human faces on its back also echoed along. That's right, her toy. Ryu Minsik is also her toy. But Ryu Minsik is a defective product. That's right, malfunctioning garbage. Ryu Minsik is defective. He is garbage. Ryu Minsik looked at the scene, deeply shocked inside. The zombie continued. She hates Ryu Minsik very much. You are only a zombie, only a defective product. Ryu Minsik could not understand a single thing the mutant zombie was saying. But the question that had troubled him for so long now seemed to gradually have an answer. Baekdo Hyen, Ryu Minsik, and the zombie incident. The culprit behind all of this was none other than that winged goddess. Is it to get rid of me, this defective product who is not loyal to her and is different from Baekdo Hyen? Is that why you lured me to this dangerous place? Right now, Ryu Minsik only wanted to know where the winged goddess was. After hearing his words, the mutant zombie finally could not hold back anymore, and once again burst into hearty laughter. Would killing garbage like you require this much effort? Ryu Minsik then asked why it had brought him here. The mutant zombie raised its right hand and told Ryu Minsik that it was to hand this place over to him. After hearing this, Ryu Minsik felt an even stronger sense of eeriness in his heart, because the mutant zombie had seen Ryu Minsik's expression when he first saw this place. You were excited, weren't you? You want to use this to destroy everything, don't you? What you yourself will become, and what you will do to humanity. Ryu Minsik, you know nothing. At this moment, Han Tani brought over a box of grenades. Then she forcefully threw out the things inside. This was a plan set by Ryu Minsik. When Han Tani jumped down, Ryu Minsik had said one phrase, ESR. When she landed, Ryu Minsik caught her with his tentacles. She saw that the crimson door sign read explosive storage room, and immediately understood what Ryu Minsik meant. Ryu Minsik caught several grenades with his tentacles. He stuffed them into every mouth on the mutant zombie, then violently shoved the zombie away. Immediately after, Ryu Minsik completely wrapped the mutant zombie with his tentacles. The grenades exploded instantly, blasting the zombie into pieces, while he was also caught in the shockwave. Fragments of the zombie splattered onto the surrounding weapons and walls. Ryu Minsik's arm began to recover as he slowly let out a breath of relief. He recalled the words the zombie had just said. He knew that the zombie had spoken to him in that tone, as if it had seen through everything, merely to disturb his mind. But those wraithings still made his heart beat so fast. Han Tani slapped him across the face, snapping Ryu Minsik back to his senses. Because just now, no matter how she called out to Ryu Minsik, he did not respond. But Ryu Minsik thanked her, saying that sometimes he really did need her to do that. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly began shaking violently. Han Tani judged that it was an earthquake, and they had to leave this place immediately. Ryu Minsik was just about to move when he heard the zombie's voice calling out, telling him not to go. Ryu Minsik followed the sound and looked toward the ceiling. Ryu Minsik, don't go. Play with me a little longer. The mutant zombie said that it still had one more gift to give Ryu Minsik. At this moment, a massive flood suddenly surged in. Ryu Minsik quickly observed the surroundings. Before he could think of a way, the water had already rushed right in front of them. Judging from the force of the water and the direction it was flowing in from, Ryu Minsik immediately determined that this was not a leak caused by an ordinary earthquake. Instead, the ground had already been completely submerged, and the flood had poured in all at once. Realizing that the current could no longer be avoided, Ryu Minsik immediately told Han Tani to hold her breath. The two of them took a deep breath at the same time, and in the next second, the surging flood swept Han Tani away. At the critical moment, Ryu Minsik grabbed her. He pulled her and swam toward the outside. This was an even deeper underground level, and if they delayed even a moment longer, they would be completely trapped and die here. So they had to leave this place in one breath. The exit was right ahead, just a little farther. They soon swam out to the surface. Just as Ryu Minsik had expected, the ground had already been flooded. But what exactly had happened here? Ryu Minsik noticed that Han Tani was about to suffocate, so he had to bring her to the surface first. But at this moment, the mutant zombie's voice suddenly came from below. Ryu Minsik, give up. As soon as the words fell, one of Ryu Minsik's legs was tightly entangled by the zombie. Stop struggling so desperately. A dying struggle has no meaning. You no longer need to struggle, Ryu Minsik. Ryu Minsik had not expected the mutant zombie to catch up so quickly. Now, he had to rescue Han Tani to the surface first. Ryu Minsik quickly came up with a method. At this moment, Shin Jaiwoo was piloting a helicopter and circling overhead. Ryu Minsik used his tentacles to violently fling Han Tani out of the water. Shin Jaiwoo also immediately saw Han Tani. He quickly piloted the helicopter and caught her, along with one of Ryu Minsik's arms wrapped around her. Shin Jaiwoo asked how she had come out of the water, and where Ryu Minsik and the others were. Han Tani gasped for breath, then told him that Ryu Minsik was still in the water. Ryu Minsik, give up. You have already gone through 100 cycles, and you still do not understand? No matter what you do to D-City, no matter how you struggle, humanity will ultimately all die. This is her omnipotent will, and also the predetermined future. Submit, become a true zombie and serve her. Only this way can you survive. And only this way can Ryu Dami survive. Ryu Minsik learned the mutant zombie's telepathy. How dare you say Ryu Dami's name with that disgusting mouth? This shocked the mutant zombie as well. How can you use my telepathy? Ryu Minsik ignored it and continued. And you talk about letting Ryu Dami survive? Are you trying to turn my daughter into a zombie too? The mutant zombie had said earlier that it did not know what Ryu Minsik would become. Now, Ryu Minsik would tell it personally. Ryu Minsik would find the winged goddess. He would make her regret creating a defective product like Ryu Minsik. Ryu Minsik would use endless pain to tear her completely apart, piece by piece. With that said, Ryu Minsik pulled the safety pin and detonated it together with the high-level special mutant zombie. At the same time, above the water surface, the calm water suddenly erupted into a water column dozens of meters high. The helicopter immediately flew to the side. Han Tani stared closely at the situation below, shouting Mayor Ryu's name in concern. The water spray dozens of meters high finally fell back down. At this moment, Han Tani heard a strange sound coming from behind her. She turned around and saw that the arm was regrowing a body. Soon, a human outline gradually appeared. Shin Jaiwa said, sorry, Ryu Minsik. No matter how many times I see you like this, I don't think I'll ever get used to it in this lifetime. Ryu Minsik's mission this time could also be considered completed without serious danger. Afterward, the flood that had submerged Jiryong unit receded quickly as if by magic. D-City fell into 3 days of darkness, but under the Blue Hawk unit's control, the citizens remained safe and sound. The damaged sections of Dam Daecheong were urgently repaired, and the power supply was restored as well. Later, Ryu Minsik and the others, fully armed, entered Jiryong unit's underground area once again. Just as Ryu Minsik had said, powerful equipment was indeed hidden here. Shin Jaiwo nodded. Ryu Minsik also nodded in response. He looked toward Han Tani. She also nodded gently. Ryu Minsik had already handed Pluto's door's authentication key to her for safekeeping earlier. Han Tani did not understand this. Ryu Minsik explained the reason to her. These were weapons meant to strengthen D-City, and they absolutely could not be allowed to become tools that destroyed everything. He believed it would be safer for her to keep it. For now, Pluto's door would remain a secret known only to the two of them, and it absolutely could not be opened unless the final moment came. Now, Ryu Minsik once again stood at a high place, overlooking D-City. Ryu Dami felt that something about him seemed to have changed. Han Tani told Ryu Dami that it seemed Ryu Minsik's state of mind had changed after Jiryong unit was flooded, but Ryu Dami felt that was not it. It was more like he had become even more terrifying than before. At this moment, Shin Jaiwo found Ryu Minsik. He informed him of the true meaning of the string of numbers in the underground fortress. After converting that string of numbers into longitude and latitude, they obtained a set of location coordinates. Ryu Minsik asked where the coordinates were. On Olympic Aro in Sompa district. Ryu Minsik furrowed his brows and listened carefully. That was another city, named S City.